Here we have a quorum, so let's take roll.
You have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. And actually, we will be at ease for a minute. Got some housekeeping. We have, as you can see, a pretty robust docket here today. The first matter up is Senate Bill 1495, Senator Surville's bill. It's been requested that we re-refer that to judiciary by the patron or with the agreement of the patron. And so let's get a motion and a second on that.
So moved.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded that we re-refer SB 1495 to judiciary. Can you open the roll?
Ayes 9, noes 0.
All right, so Senate Bill 1495 is re-referred to judiciary. Let's see. Next up, I'm going to take up, and I'll pass the gavel over, my Senate Bill 1391. So let me speak to that just briefly, and then I have a motion to make on my own bill. I have been here long enough to realize that when the irrational feeding frenzy sets in, there is no room for meaningful discussion. And that is what has happened, again, with the help and prodding of social media. So that's what's happened, in my view, with Senate Bill 1391. Questions have been raised about the applicability or the impact, rather, on affordable housing. Certainly that's something I'm concerned with. I don't think it's a substantial or real impact, but certainly something I'm concerned about. And so I think this bill obviously needs a deeper dive than can be afforded here in the midst of the feeding frenzy and the maelstrom of a short session. So my motion will be, at the appropriate time, is to get this to the Housing Commission to take a look at it, and the chairman of the Housing Commission is aware that it's coming. So I don't know who's on the Housing Commission. I do know one now. But I can pretty much tell you one thing, and I say this to my friends in local government. They're going to take a deep dive in this. They're going to come with some recommendations, and the recommendation is not likely to be the status quo. So to my friends here in local government who tell me that they spent a lot of time on this and it's all they're going to do, I would suggest to you going forward that's probably not going to be a productive place to start the discussion. So with that, Madam Chair, I would move that Senate Bill 1391 be passed by indefinitely with a letter to the Housing Commission to take a deep dive on it.
Okay, that's a motion. There's a second. Any debate or discussion? Hearing none, will the clerk please open the roll?
Ayes 12, noes 0.
Mr. Chairman, your bill is PBI'd, and a letter will, I guess you'll be writing the letter? It will be on its way to the Housing Commission?
From the clerk, one of the two, yeah.
Very well. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I was going to take up some really quick charter bills, but Senator Pillion has them, and I do not see him here. He is here? There he is. What an entrance. What an entrance.
Thank you. Thank you.
I figure these, I'm hoping they're non-controversial charter
They're not.
bills.
Oh, I don't think they are. Travis may disagree with me, but so 1535. Draw your attention to that, Mr. Chairman. This bill's to dissolve the Smith-Washington Regional Industrial Facilities Authority pursuant to a resolution unanimously adopted by the board. In short, the board is of the opinion that the purpose of the authority has been substantially fulfilled and all obligations incurred have been paid or already arranged. So it's at their request that this is dissolved.
All right, is there anybody to speak on 1535? Any questions? First of all, any questions of Senator Pillion on 1535? Anyone to speak on 1535? Anybody against 1535? Moved, seconded, that we report Senate Bill 1535. Clerk, please open the roll. All right, Senator Pillion.
Ayes 11, no 0.
Yep, Senator Spruill. What, Senator Spruill?
It's fine. Okay.
Okay. All right, next
Mr.
up,
Chairman,
Senator.
1536.
All right.
This is a simple charter change. Several changes to the charter of the City of Norton, reflecting the city's shift from, of course, May to November municipal elections, updating the city's boundary description, and removing outdated provisions related to the appointed school board. And that, of course, comes at the request of Norton City Council.
All right. Any questions for Senator Pillion on Senate Bill 1536? Anybody speak on 1536? For or against? Is there a motion on 1536? Moved and seconded that we report 1536. Clerk, open the roll.
Ayes 13, no 0.
All right, bill reports.
And, Mr. Chairman, the last one is Senate Bill 1537. And Senator Hashmi and Senator Hackworth are both very familiar with this piece of legislation.
Yes, yes, we all are.
Yes, of course. This bill would repeal the legislation passed in 2022 to revoke the charter of the town of Pound in Wise County. The original bill, of course, was revoke their charter. After Pound made headlines in 2021 when business owners of former coal town stopped paying taxes, every town employee quit or was fired, and the police department was disbanded. That bill, thankfully, to some good work of this committee, had a provision delaying the repeal of the charter until November 1st of 2023, with the understanding that if the town was able to get back on track and serve its citizen, we would work on a repeal. Just last week, the town announced it had paid off its debts. They had elected new council members, selected a mayor, and are coordinating with VML on their town issues, including budgeting. So hopefully be the pleasure of the committee to pass this bill.
Anybody have any questions for Senator
Mr.
Pillion?
Chairman,
Senator Hashmi.
would the senator agree that I was correct last year?
Don't answer that. Don't answer that.
Mr. Chairman, that's why I gave her a shout out at the beginning of my testimony.
All right. Anybody else with questions for Senator
Chairman.
Pillion? Senator Bell.
Last year, I remember we had some pretty disturbing audit findings that were briefed. Can you give us, were those clarified, cleared up, the $20,000 of checks found in a desk drawer, et cetera?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Bell, to my understanding, that those all have been cleared up. Those budgetary issues have been resolved, and with the working with VML, that's been all taken care of.
Any other questions for Senator Pillion? Anybody here want to speak in favor of Senate Bill 1537? Anybody want to speak against 1537? Oh, I'm sorry. Come on, Michelle. I'm not Michelle.
Favor.
Sorry.
Yes, favor, of course. Michelle Gowdy from VML. I just want to say that we've worked really hard with the town of Pound, and we're grateful to them for giving them a charter back. Thank you.
All right.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded that we report 1537. Clerk, please open the roll.
Really? You want to hear
Ayes
about this?
13, no 0, 1 abstention.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, so we've taken care of that, and we'll go to the sign-up sheet now with Senator Locke.
Mr. Chairman, I have Senate Bill 838, and there is a substitute, I believe.
All right. Is there a substitute, Jeff? Okay. Anybody want to move the substitute? Moved and seconded that we adopt the substitute for Senate Bill 838. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Substitute's before us.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And with the substitute, the City of Hampton would like the General Assembly to allow localities to require registration for any vacant building that has been vacant for 12 months and that either is derelict or meets the definition of criminal blight, or where a locality has determined that squatters are present. Prior to 2013, localities had the authority to require registration of any building that had been vacant for a period of 12 months or more. In 2013, the General Assembly amended the code to allow registration of such buildings only if they also met the definition of derelict, which is defined as a residential or non-residential building or structure, whether or not construction has been completed that might endanger the public's health, safety, or welfare, and for a continuous period in excess of 6 months. It has been vacant, boarded up in accordance with the building code, and not lawfully connected to electric service from a utility service provider, or not lawfully connected to any required water or sewer service from a utility service provider. Vacant buildings can attract squatters, particularly in houses with owners who do not reside locally. This can lead to an increase in crime in a neighborhood. Though the houses are vacant, they are not derelict and therefore do not meet the definition for the registry. And with that, that's the bill.
All right, thank you, Senator Locke. Any questions for Senator Locke?
Just one question.
Senator Favola.
Senator Locke, I guess it would be incumbent upon the city to inform individuals if they meet this ordinance definition, and
Correct.
and they would have to then file.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions from the committee for Senator Locke? Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak in favor of Senate Bill 838? Come on up.
Good morning. I'm Bonnie Brown, Deputy City Attorney. We're here to support the bill. Senator Locke described it perfectly. I'd only add that we worked with the realtors, and we support the amendment to the bill as well.
Very good. Next, Laura.
Hi, Mr. Chairman. I'm Laura Bateman, representing Virginia First Cities. This is a bill that's important to our membership, and we're very supportive.
Yep, Senator DeStaff.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Locke, this may be a question for the staff. I don't see where it says Hampton in here. It has Clifton Forge, Town of Pulaski. I did in the original bill, but in the substitute. Am I missing something, Jeff?
Okay.
Any city. Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
And any city. Okay, so.
We'll do it. Yeah, we'll do committee members next.
All right, got it.
Okay. Any other questions for Senator Locke from the committee? Anybody speak against Senate Bill 838? Is there anybody on Zoom? Do we have anyone on Zoom?
Anyone on Zoom who would like to speak on the bill, you may raise your hand. We do have speakers on Zoom, Mr. Chairman.
It's coming. All right.
Sherry Neal, you may provide your testimony. Sherry Neal, you may provide your testimony.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Sherry Neal, City of Portsmouth. We support the bill. Thank you very much.
Great testimony. Anybody else?
We have no more speakers, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, great. Bill's in front of us.
Mr. Chairman, I move we report the bill.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we report Senate Bill 838, amendment in the nature of a substitute. Open the roll.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Your bill reports.
Thank you. I love this committee.
We're a lovable group.
That include me too, Mamie? Me too?
All right, next up on the sign-up sheet, we have Senator Peterson, who is not here. All right, Senator Eben.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Senate Bill 1091 relating to local stormwater management fund. We passed this legislation to benefit private flood mitigation projects that benefit communities that they could receive grants. And then it came to our attention that condominiums were not allowed to apply or were not being recognized as having the same stake. So wanted to see if we could just tweak this and allow for joint flood mitigation projects of condominium owners to be included as well. And I do have one speaker.
Okay. But first of all, let me see. Any questions for Senator Eben? All right. And those, you want somebody to speak in favor of 1091?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Mike Sherman with the County of Henrico. We support this initiative. We are a heavy user of this program, and expanding its application can only benefit both our community and the environment. And also, Mr. Chairman, if you will, through the magic of technology, this morning I'm also Sarah Taylor with the City of Alexandria. Unfortunately, she's not able to be here with us this morning, but has asked me to tell you that the original legislation that established this fund was at the request of the City of Alexandria and that they support the change to the grant program.
Okay, great. Anyone else to speak in favor of Senate Bill 1091? Anybody to speak against Senate Bill 1091? Anybody on Zoom?
Mr. Chairman, we have one speaker on Zoom.
Okay, go ahead.
Vic Nichols, you may provide your testimony.
I'd like to thank Senator Rubin for putting this up. I can tell you on Hampton Roads that we have a lot of where we have little fill-in areas and areas where we're trying to do larger density. And some of those places are not in the highest of all land areas. So this would be a boon where you would have developments on other sides that were able to get funding, but it would take away from the condos. So yes, this is a big problem. And again, I'd like to thank Senator Rubin for addressing it.
All right.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep, Senator Spruill.
I want you to know Ms. Nichols, she's doing a great job in Chesapeake, and she made the right move this time. Thank you so much.
All right. Senate Bill 1091 is in front of us.
Move the report.
Second.
Moved and properly seconded that we report Senate Bill 1091. Clerk, please open the roll.
Ayes 15, no 0.
All right, Senator Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee.
Yes, sir. We have run out of non-committee member patrons.
Yes, I guess you have.
And so we've got, I've got Peterson, Edwards, and Boysko signed up to present, and neither of them is here. So let's go through the docket.
Judiciary's meeting.
Yeah, let's go through the docket and see. Senator Bell, you have one, 1014. Do you want to do that?
I wanted to do it before Sandy got here.
Yes, we've had this in front of us before. Has there been any progress?
Mr. Chairman, there's been earth-shattering progress. We have a substitute.
It's all we have in this committee is earth-shattering progress.
We got to up our ratings on the stream. We have a substitute. If we want to go ahead and.
Second.
Moved and seconded, we adopt substitute. All in favor? Aye. Aye. That's it. Okay, substitutes in front of us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The issue from the last time was the fact that, and I think these are valid concerns, that if someone had restrictive covenants and the properties passed on, that we wouldn't go against the wishes of the people who had originally put in those restrictive covenants. Let me explain this situation. What we've done with the substitute is narrow it down. So it's very specific to this property. I don't know if the clerk can say it, but it probably makes this special legislation because it's very particular to Loudoun County in the one section. In this case, the owners of the property are 3 recreational organizations, and the property is zoned for recreational use. The 3 owners, which I think at least one of them will be here today, Sterling Golf Club, the Lower Loudoun Boys Football League, and the Lower Loudoun National Little League Baseball. So it's used for recreational use now, and what they want to do is put new fields in, football, baseball, and also put a swimming pool in there, which would be open for public use. The problem is they found through fundraising all these organizations were doing, it's quite expensive to do that, more than they could fundraise to make these kind of projects to be what they really could be. If they were to do it another way, they'd actually have to go get permission from each of the 3,500 residents in this area, which is pretty impractical. And since it's used for recreation now, it's going to be used for recreation in the future. It's really a matter of just allowing Loudoun County to invest the money to make these projects be what they really could be. The owners of the properties do support this. They badly want this because they've realized that they can't raise the money to make it the way that they want it to be. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions, but again, this has been very narrowed down where it is, I think, pretty clear that it only affects Loudoun County. And again, in this case, we're not changing really the purpose. It's recreation now. It's going to be recreation in the future. It's in the same area. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that Senator Stanley might have.
All right, any questions for Senator Bell?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Spruill.
You raised a question, this only affects Loudoun County. But can someone else say, well, you did it last year to Loudoun County, I want to do it now? It's just a Loudoun County only? Can it be opened up to anybody next year?
Mr. Chairman, first, residents of Chesapeake will be able to come and use these beautiful facilities once they're completed. Let me make that clear, particularly for all state senators.
Okay, all right, okay.
However, on lines 10 and lines 12 of the bill, it specifically says Loudoun County and Loudoun County only.
Thank you, sir. You got my vote. Thank you so much.
Any other questions for Senator Bell? Is there any? You got one?
Wait.
Well, I knew that was coming. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I'd ask the gentleman, but it can be changed to include other counties. Next year, somebody could come back with a bill that just amends it to include Stafford. Isn't that correct?
Mr. Chairman, I will not bring that bill, that's for sure.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Stanley.
And so I'm to take that as a yes, that this creates a Christmas tree with one ball on it right now, but many can be hanging from it in a couple of years.
Mr. Chairman, in my house, we have Christmas trees, but actually the lights are so beautiful, we don't even put ornaments on it. And I won't be bringing this next year. I hope Senator Stanley won't, and I hope that's not what he's suggesting here, because I think this should be only Loudoun County.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Stanley.
Can you assure me that there are any roadblocks or safeguards or something that makes this bill bulletproof so that no other county can come next year or the years after and add to it?
Mr. Chairman, what I would say is the fact that in two places it says specifically Loudoun County, and I know that everyone in this committee, including my friend, Mr. Stanley there, would like to see these children play on brand new football and baseball fields. And since it's special legislation and it has a high vote count, I think that's a pretty big barrier for anybody coming back again. And I love this back and forth.
I'm done. You got me. You're done? Okay. Any other questions from the committee for Senator Bell? Is there anyone in the audience to speak in favor of Senate Bill 1014? Where are the children? Nobody speak in favor of 1014.
We have speakers on Zoom, Mr. Chairman.
Well, let me see if anybody in the audience to speak against 1014. Anybody got any problems with it? All right, and go to the Zoom, please.
Leo Rogers, you may provide your testimony.
Yep. Okay.
Leo, you're unmuted. You're muted, sir.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Wanted to just follow up with what Senator Bell just stated. In this case, there's no homeowners association, and the only process in Virginia to get rid of the covenant would be to get all 3,500 property owners to agree. The covenant restricts the property to community recreation. Loudoun will be using it for community recreation, and this gives us the ability to invest money in the property for the good of the community and the 3 rec associations who have agreed to voluntarily convey their property as part of this improvement. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else on Zoom?
Scott Davis, you may provide your testimony. Mr. Davis, you may provide your testimony.
Hello, how you doing, Mr. Chairman? Thanks for having me today. I'm Scott Davis. I represent Sterling Park Golf, Swim, and Tennis. I've grown up here my whole life, and we are 100% in support of working this bill and working with the county to enhance facilities for everybody in this community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Karan Sands, you may provide your testimony.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, committee. Thank you for letting me speak on behalf of this bill this morning. The Sterling District Supervisor on the Loudoun County Board of Supervisors, who, with my community, came up with this bill and presented it to Senator Bell, who has definitely done a great job presenting this bill in front of you this morning. We're in support of it. We just would like to remove the covenants, which, you know, if you read the covenants itself, it prohibits anybody that lives outside of the Sterling Park community from using those rec facilities, which, as we know, if you follow Little League football or baseball, if you have any youth members, you know that you play other folks from other communities within your county, outside your community, for those events every single weekend. So since the inception of the covenants, it's been broken. So we just would like to go ahead and remove those covenants to allow the county to continue to partner with the Little League, with the Lower Loudoun football, and with the golf club to enhance our facilities and have great recreational for our communities for generations to come. So I hope you guys can support this motion today. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else on Zoom?
We have no more speakers, Mr. Chairman.
Moved and properly seconded that we report Senate Bill 1014, amendment in the nature of a substitute. Well, I'm sorry, Senator DeSteph had a question. I'm sorry.
So I'm going to defer to Senator Stanley first, and then I'll follow up after him.
Okay, sure.
Well, and then speak to the bill. So I understand why, and certainly I'm sympathetic to it. I haven't heard that all of a sudden we're keeping children off of the playground because they don't live in a certain neighborhood. But we have centuries of land and title transfers that have not been broken, that have worked out really well, that have a process. It sounds like 3,900 people, we just don't want to send all the letters out. We just don't want to do the footwork. That covenant was put there for a reason. And so to have the covenant taken out, I think we have a process that already works to create a process in this bill which opens the door for other counties, cities, and towns to create a process where they go around property transfer and property restriction modalities that have worked here for centuries is just troubling to me. Because if we do it once, and I hate, the worst phrase I hate in this General Assembly is the camel's nose under the tent, then what stops the next county or municipality? And how far are we willing to go to degrade the rights of property and the restricting of those rights of property in order to put forth or allow a government to do something that otherwise it's restricted by the calls of the deed and the restrictions in the title. So that's my philosophical lawyer concern. I understand why you're doing it, but and I love you, man. But I just can't vote for this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator DeSteph.
Mr. Chair, the way Senator Stanley articulated it, I'm good. I don't have any questions. Senator Bell,
That never happens.
think the world of you, but we're talking about deeds and property rights that have been in place, and then with the swipe of a pen here in the General Assembly without going through the 3,900 users, I just have a hard time with this.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Bell.
I don't know if we could possibly do a slight amendment. Is it possible to amend it in a way where we could say that the covenants could only be modified in this if it was a similar use? Because the covenants allow for recreational use before, they still allow for recreational use. Pardon?
Just who can use it.
Just who can use it. And the fact that the county can invest and do invest funds on it. That's the other issue now. I don't know if
Mr. Chairman.
Whoa. Sorry. Wait. Do you have, and you may have already given it to us, the precise language of the covenant? Restrictive covenant?
Mr. Chairman, I did not, but
Okay.
the language of it, we can certainly get it, not before we're done today, but the language of the covenant is recreational use. And for the residents of that area. I can phone a friend if Mr. Rogers is still in line. He's the county attorney for Loudoun County. If he can.
I'd be curious what the actual language is. Is he still on?
Mr. Rogers, you may speak on the bill.
Thank you. The covenant was put on the property 60 years ago by U.S. Steel, and no HOA was created. It restricts the use of Central Park to community recreation, intended to be used for the general community. Unfortunately, in Virginia, there's no process to get rid of a covenant. And I'd like to speak to Senator Stanley's theories and practicality. In law, the free alienation of property is what English common law proposes. And unfortunately, in Virginia, there's no process to get rid of a stale covenant such as this. The first theory was to come up with that process. That would be a significant effort to do. So we thought, let's just make this laser focused. It's a recreational covenant for the community of 3,500 properties. Now it'll be a recreational covenant for the county in general, as well as the community, as well as these nonprofit rec associations, which, by the way, are using volunteers to raise money, volunteers to maintain the facility. Loudoun County would step in, bring them up to today's standards, and maintain them for them, just like every other community has that's not subject to this stale covenant.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Follow up, Senator Stanley?
Mr. Chair, I would ask the patron, is this covenant being enforced? Are they keeping people off the fields and out of the ways who might be from Fox Chase at Exeter
Mr. Chairman.
in Loudoun County? I mean,
Mr. Chairman, of course, the residents of Loudoun County are enforcing that covenant. I would say that I think they're doing their best. I mean, they are restricting their scheduling of their league and other things to abide by the covenant, but I don't think they're checking every ID when they come. That would be, I think, a bit impractical. But the problem is of making the facilities. I mean, I know my son, when he was going to high school, we were trying to raise money for like a press box, announcer's box behind the baseball field, and I thought it'd be fairly inexpensive. It was $100,000. So to do the kind of things that they want to do, particularly to put ADA type restrooms, et cetera. These are expensive things to do, and it's beyond what they can fundraise and do. Again, I hear your concerns, but the issue here really is it is recreational now. It'll still be recreational in the future. It does open up a little bit. In context, 60 years ago, these were farmlands. There was nobody there. And I think it would have been pretty hard to look at that and envision what it would be today.
Senator Favola.
Mr. Chairman, I mean, I view this as a positive tool in the toolbox for localities because, in effect, we're creating a pathway to remove a restrictive covenant that, if it's removed, it would still be used for the intended purpose, but the county could expand the use, invest in the use, make it a better public use. I don't see why this would be problematic. I mean, I don't understand conceptually why you would have a problem if the original covenant restricted the use to recreation and the county saying, you know what, we're going to continue to use it for recreational purposes. We just don't want that private restrictive covenant on it because we want to invest and make it a better facility. And at some later point, I suppose the general public, if that would there be an avenue for the general public to use this beyond the community is my question.
Mr. Chairman, it would be open to the general public if this change is allowed and the facilities are upgraded.
I mean, what is the downside of this then?
Well, it's a legal thing.
Mr. Chairman,
we're changing the law. And remember, it's voluntary.
no, we're changing, Mr. Chairman, we're changing the process of removing restrictive covenants. And especially if you're a government, then somehow you have more power or you have this power to come to us and change hundreds of years of title law and legal title. I do not, Mr. Chairman, in any way, and I am not trying to keep the kids off the playground or off the ball fields. That's not my point. It sounds like a great thing you're trying to do. I just don't know that this opens a door for some way of, and I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but this is just opening up an ability to cast aside restrictive covenants while ignoring what has been the process in Virginia for many, many, many years because you're a government and because you say so.
Mr. Chairman,
It just hampers people's rights to property and alienation of property as well.
Mr. Chairman,
I mean, Senator Bell.
I see your point. You know, I do. You know, I want to try to do everything we can to make it as restrictive as we can. That's why it's special legislation. Frankly, I didn't want to go there originally, but I think it's the right thing to do. You know, I would say we have to trust in the will of our successors that they wouldn't allow that nose in the tent, that they would keep this from growing. I mean, but let's be honest. We can change the time. We can change whether coconut milk is milk or not. We can outlaw bark mulch. These are all things that we've done before, and I would argue that we have to trust that the people will not want to go to this high bar to change it in the future and do what's good for the people.
Wait a minute. I've got a couple of people lined up. Senator Hackworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to my friend from Franklin County, I think that, there's no opposition to this, correct?
Mr. Chairman, there is no opposition, and the three property owners are the three recreational organizations that I mentioned, the football, the golf, tennis, and the baseball, and they're all in favor. I've got letters from all of them.
And the community and the county and everything is wanting this to happen, correct?
Mr. Chairman, the Board of Supervisors held meetings on this, and it was voted unanimously in a bipartisan way. We know of no opposition.
So, Mr. Chair and Senator Bell, I mean, to me, this is a positive. I agree with Senator Favola that this is a positive thing, and if this is the only path that we have to make this happen, I mean, it is a process that you are coming before us. You do have people here. There is discussion. There is a lot of talk about it. So, I mean, this is what it's taken to do it. So, I mean, I feel that this is a positive thing, and I would support it.
Senator McPike.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wasn't going to speak until I heard the word mulch, but since it's been spoken this morning, no. In all seriousness, there are a couple things that stand out to me that are a little different from what Senator Stanley highlights. Clearly, the voluntary conveyance by the nonprofits associated with this is an important detail, but my view of it is also a funding and appropriations one. So if the locality right now, essentially the covenants have an exclusive parameter around it. And to use county funds, you'd need to have open to all kids in the county, not just the kids that live there. And so that it's really an exclusive covenant that the organizations involved has said, we want to give it up in order to have the county also participate in funding because we want to see more kids use it. So this bill seems to be also a more technical one. Is that correct, Mr. Bell, Senator Bell, that you have to release this in order to get county funds involved? Otherwise, it becomes a much different process, much more complicated.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
Thank you.
Senator Vole, did you have something else you wanted to say?
That's why we have the process.
I was just going to say that creating a more welcoming environment, allowing localities to invest, and expanding our assets so everybody is welcome, I think is a good thing. So I would urge my colleagues to vote for this. I know our lawyers like to imagine every possible client issue that might come before them and how they would argue it. I get that. But now you have an opportunity to create something great.
Mr. Chairman,
I say go for it.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Spruill.
I'm hoping that we will support this. A covenant scares me to the audience who are out there. Remember, a long time ago, these types of covenants restrict Jews and blacks from participating in other areas. This opened it up. So I got to support it because we don't need nothing in this day and time. We don't need anything to restrict anybody from doing anything at all. And this, the way it used to be, it was Jews and blacks could not participate in stuff like this. So I'm hoping we get this out of here, Mr. Chairman, because it's time now that we all be welcome to everything, and this is good. I'm supporting this.
Senator Stanley.
Mr. Chairman, as the chairman knows, when it comes to those restrictive covenants that were based on race or exclusion of a person because of how they looked, are vile and void of public policy. That is totally in violation. So those become void, not voidable. Those are automatically void. So that argument has nothing to do with what's here. This is just changing, this is going around the process, short-circuiting the process because the government says it can, and changing laws that have been in place for procedures for these things so that when they are changed, and I hope it is, that they follow the process so everyone who deserves notice and benefits from the restrictive covenant has notice, doesn't object, or if they do, they work it out. That's the way of the land. And so, respectfully, hope you get it all done. Love it. Not trying to keep the kids off the field. But we have these safeguards in place for making sure that something a local government wants to do in the future does not occur because we have these protections. It is a noble cause, my friend. I do not object to the cause.
Sounds like we're getting to the same place, Senator Stanley. I move that the bill be reported.
Moved and seconded that the bill be reported. Clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 13, noes 2.
All right, bill reports.
Thank you.
It's finally here. Come on up.
Thank you, sir. Someone left their notepad here. John? All right. Mr. Chair, ladies and gentlemen of the committee, this is a...
You got a substitute?
Do I?
I thought, do you have a substitute? I was told you have a substitute.
I have a substitute? Okay, sure. I mean, I'm just a puppet up here, folks, just in case you were wondering. Sure,
Okay.
Distribute the substitute.
All right.
Technical substitute, original bill is drawn to the wrong version
Right.
of the section. So
Right.
Oh, okay.
technical.
Well, I'm going to trust staff on this. I can't say I've spent a lot of time thinking about. I'm very familiar with this. This is the PACE bill, Property Assessed Clean Energy, and this was a structure we put in place.
Well, substitute. Somebody want to move it? So moved.
Second.
Move, second. We adopt the substitute. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Substitute's in front of us. Go ahead.
Okay, and just to give background, I believe this dates back to 2007 or 2008 when I first came into the Senate, that first Creed Eads and then myself had bills that allowed localities to set up what were called PACE funds, Property Assessed Clean Energy, where you could draw down a loan or receive funds from your local government and use that to install a geothermal system or solar or some other type of sustainable system. And the idea would be you would then pay that back and it would be assessed as part of your real estate taxes. And that was very popular back in 14, 15 years ago. The bill passed, and then it got pushed back from the bankers because there was an issue of the priority of the liens, and we actually wrote that into the statute where we said that liens, in other words, first deeds of trust that were already in existence, would be given priority, so that would not be an issue, and that kind of dealt with the Sally Mae issue. At some point, commercial PACE proceeded forward and residential PACE was pulled out. And to be honest, in the midst of times, I have trouble remembering why we made that distinction, but we clearly made that distinction that commercial PACE and multifamily PACE has still remained on the books, but residential PACE has been pulled back. And for years, when I talk to people in the solar community and they say, why isn't residential PACE back in the bill? And just now I had comments from Senator DeSteph that showed me that perhaps residential PACE ought to have its own code section that would be cleaner because it may have different issues than commercial PACE or a multifamily PACE. I'm not the expert on that. My only goal is to make this more available to people. I think PACE programs make sense. Local governments, particularly in smaller communities, can use this as sort of a revolving fund for home improvements. That seems to work well. I know in my area, Fairfax City, we have a similar revolving fund for home renovation. So that's basically the bill. Again, mine just makes it available to everybody, includes single-family residences. But if it's a technical correction to put that out in a separate section, I'd be fine with that too.
Mr. Chair.
I've got Senator DeSteph first, Senator Hashmi, and then I'll get right back to you.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I did share that with Senator Peterson prior. The gentleman who actually wrote this code section initially is the one who brought it up to me. And what I'll do is I'll have him work with CHAP. So if we move it out of this committee, then before it goes to the floor, I'll have him work with CHAP if it does need to be in a separate code section to clear up those differences. And I do understand, he wrote me a long email with a lot of the differences. So I do understand it, but I'd like to, and I know CHAP's amenable to it, or Senator Peterson's amenable to it. I'd like to make sure that I get the two of them to work together to make this so it truly is a separate section of the code, and there's none of those confusions. But I think the concept on both sides, residential and commercial, is a good idea, so I support the concept. It's just the approach, so we'll work that out and go from there.
I got the same email, Senator Senator Hashmi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I think my question was along the same lines as Senator DeSteph, but staff had announced just as we were starting to look at the bill that there was a technical amendment. Did that, if I could ask staff, does that technical amendment put in a different, okay, so that was my question. Thank you.
So let me ask, Jeff, your opinion between now and the floor, I mean, is it possible to fix that?
I can put it all together.
Okay.
It's more complicated.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure. Sure, Senator Peterson.
I think the question would be if you could just take the same language that you have in 15.2-958.3E and just create a separate code section for single-family residential. I guess that would be the issue. Now, I know the bankers have an opinion. So
well,
maybe
we'll get to them in a second.
We'll get to them in a second, but that's how I would do it.
All right. Let's go to anyone here to speak in favor first of 949. Well, it's easy. Nobody likes it anyway. So Anybody speak against Senate Bill 949?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Matt Bruning with the Virginia Bankers Association. You may recall we had a work group that the Department of Energy hosted, I think it was 2 years ago. Delegate Reed had a budget amendment that set that up. It came back with a recommendation not to pursue residential PACE. These are two very, very different programs. On the commercial side versus residential, you have very different people that are involved in the transaction. Our two main concerns that we've always had with residential PACE, one is, and it's in the, you can see it in the bill, there's a lack of consumer protection as far as the residential side of things. Again, very different, participants in the transaction. I will say that the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the federal regulator, by federal law is developing regulations for consumer protection. They're not out yet. We anticipate them sometime in the spring, so I think it's a little premature to put something forward without knowing what the feds are going to do. The second, and Senator Peterson referenced this, is how the GSEs on the secondary market, the government-sponsored entities that purchase a lot of the mortgages, treat residential PACE loans. Freddie and Fannie, even with the way that we have it structured, it still gets them priority. They will not accept those on the secondary market because those liens transfer with the property. So when you go to sell your house, it's not that it goes with, Matt Bruning, it goes with my property, and the buyer needs to then acquire and deal with that lien. So we have a well-thought-out commercial PACE program, and the participants in that, as I said, the participants in that program are very different than in the residential transaction, and for those reasons, we continue to oppose the bill.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Spruill.
Could I ask the bank the question?
Sure.
So if he takes that out and put the residential in a separate code as he suggested, would that help? Would it help a whole lot?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Spruill, I think that would be necessary for, if we were to advance something on this side. I think the devil's in the details. Again, trying to put together what the consumer protections are. We've seen in other states, California and others, that have implemented residential PACE, and they've had some issues, and they've had to go back in and put some consumer protections in because there were some bad actors. And I think we would have to really get this right. And again, we had a work group that's, spent the entire interim.
Mr. Chairman?
I'm not sure we can do that now.
That wasn't my question. You got to be a lawyer. That was my question. I'm trying to say that if we take commercial, as he suggested, and he's saying that we do have some problems with the residential part of it, and we in a separate section of the code, then so if we take that residential part out of it, that's your major concern, then the commercial side that he was talking about, then could you support the bill?
Well, and that's the current, Mr. Chairman, Senator Spruill, that's the current law is just applicable on commercial transactions.
Right.
Setting up something different for residential, I think would look totally different than what the commercial program looks like currently.
Thank you so much.
All right, next.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. JT Blau with the Virginia Credit Union League. As most of you know, the bankers and the credit unions don't always see eye to eye on everything, but we are aligned on this issue. We do also have concerns for this bill, from a consumer protection standpoint. 3 other states have passed similar residential PACE, California, Florida, and Missouri, and we've seen some reports of some predatory behavior in those states. One of those states in particular, Missouri, they passed residential PACE. They came back later and put in some consumer protections, disclosures that had to be required, things like that. And then after that saw a pretty sharp decline in the funding of these loans, the actual lending, that activity that was being done. Senator Spruill, to your question for the bankers, if the exact language from subsection, I believe it's F, subsection E was referenced, would be put in a code section, we would continue to oppose this legislation. Thank you.
All right. Is there anybody else to speak against? Anybody on Zoom?
We have a speaker on Zoom, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Go ahead.
Nicholas Zuba, you may provide your testimony.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Chair Lewis, and as well as to the members of the Local Government Committee. My name is Nicholas Zuba. I'm Deputy Director of CPACE Alliance. We're a nonprofit trade association that advocates on the best practices of the development and administration of CPACE programs across the country. And on behalf of our membership, I'm here today to register our opposition to the passage of SB 949. With the essence of what this legislation is doing, we're opposed because, again, it is taking away this prohibition of basically providing CPACE financing to basically create energy-saving improvements in residential properties with 1 to 4 units, and as well as condominiums. Now, what this does when removing that prohibition is that it creates a lot of unintended consequences. It creates confusion and certainly a lot of inefficiencies in this case in then being able to administer basically both then the CPACE and the RPACE legislation in basically that same section of the state statute. And then basically this creates also all kinds of issues then for bill drafters in this case of the legislation, because now we can't really say, well, which sections basically of the CPACE current statute in this case going to govern just CPACE or RPACE at this point. So that also creates a little bit of confusion for the people who are trying to draft this particular legislation. And then two, that there's no other than consumer protections that are put in place to govern the RPACE portion, basically, then of the statute. So we have all those, certainly those concerns. And so we also would advocate for a separate section in the state statute to govern RPACE versus then CPACE. And then to work with those stakeholders in this case who actually are advocates and more knowledgeable on the RPACE industry to help to develop that separate section of code that will just govern RPACE on its own versus then, it being then commingled with, say, CPACE legislation. So, we would certainly advocate for that to be done in this case. And once again, we just voice our opposition to the creation of this bill.
And tell us again who you're with.
I'm with the CPACE Alliance. Again, we're a nonprofit trade association representing the CPACE industry.
Mr. Chairman, we have one more speaker.
Oh, go ahead.
Abigail Johnson, you may provide your testimony. You are muted, Abigail Johnson.
Sorry about that. You think I knew after 2 years of code. Abby Johnson, Executive Director of the Virginia PACE Authority. We're the nonprofit program administrator for Virginia's statewide commercial property assessed energy program, CPACE program. We work closely with Nick at CPACE Alliance and others in the promulgation of CPACE programs in Virginia. I also work outside the state and very familiar with some of the issues that we've encountered with residential PACE over the years. I personally think that our PACE has a place potentially in Virginia. We were part of the work group that Matt Bruni mentioned earlier. What happened, however, is that in doing that work group, there were a bunch of recommendations that were consensus-driven that listed 16 consumer protections that we would need to have in Virginia for an RPACE program to be viable, not even talking about the issues of lender consent and the fact that, frankly, right now, the way it's structured, it would create significant reputational damage to PACE generally and to us trying to get the CPACE program off the ground, where we have about $200 million of projects in the pipeline. So we're supportive conceptually in the future once things calm down, we understand what the regs coming from the federal government, and we have a really thoughtful way of including these consumer protections in our PACE program. And that would, of course, mean a different part of the code and also significant consumer protections and other things added to make that program viable and also good for the Commonwealth. So we also are representing our opposition to this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator, anybody else? That's it?
We have no more speakers, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Senator Peterson.
Yeah, tell you what, I'm going to put myself out of my misery here. There's no carryover, but I don't have a problem with passing this bill by. I do think our pace is going to come. Right. And I will say, let me just make two sort of extempore comments. One, the lien issue, we already have language in the code. We can write that however the bankers want. States like Florida have done this, so clearly it can be done. Secondly, on the consumer protection issue, that's kind of like saying because general contractors aren't always honest that we should stop, buying and selling home mortgages. Of course not. So I have a little bit of an issue with the, quote, consumer protection. Homeowners can enter these contracts and they can hire vendors and fire vendors. That's not my issue. My issue is making this available for families. But having said that, I'm happy to take this bill by for the year, and our pace will come back. I do agree, and I understand now it needs to be a separate code section. I get that loud and clear, and we can do that. And if you give me a chance, I will do that.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I will go ahead and make the motion that we PBI the bill, but I really do like the concept, so I do hope you can work on it over the next several months, Senator Peterson, and come back
Bring it
next
back.
year. Okay,
Peace.
I need a second.
Need a second.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we,
Mr. Chairman,
I'm sorry, Senator Sproul?
so we need to work on it, so you can work on with the credit union and the bankers too, right?
I'll try.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Have a motion in front of us to pass by indefinitely Senate Bill 949. Clerk, open the roll. All right, Senator Peterson, if you see Senator Edwards over there, tell him he might want to get over here eventually.
Ayes 15, no 0.
All right. Senator Hashmi, you ready for your 1111?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. This bill, just like Senator Locke's 838, also seeks to address the issue of derelict buildings, which have become a significant problem in many of our localities. And certainly here in Richmond, we are facing that significant concern as well. So this morning, of course, we added the language that the buildings that we're talking about are those that might endanger the public's health, safety, or welfare, and for a continuous period. We have had many discussions and conversations with many of our stakeholders. We are not at a point of full agreement with among all of our stakeholders. I know we have a substitute prepared, but I would ask respectfully that we pass by indefinitely this bill, but ask the chair to send a letter to the Housing Commission to take up this study. And I believe Director Palin is she's in agreement with that this is something that the Housing Commission can take up this year.
Okay, great. Senator Voll.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we pass by Senate Bill 1111 with a letter. And where would you like that letter to go?
To the Housing Commission.
To the Housing Commission, asking them to examine this issue and come back with recommendations to our committee.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we pass by indefinitely Senate Bill 1111 with a letter. All right, clerk, open the roll.
Ayes 15, no 0.
All right, thank you, Senator Hoshman. Senator McPike, are you ready to do 1141? Yes, sir. And Senator McPike, I understand from Senator McClellan that she would like to roll her bill, her 1331 into yours. Is that acceptable?
That's correct.
All right, can we get a motion on that?
And
Moved and seconded that we roll 1331 into 1141. I think, is that a recorded vote?
And that would be also to incorporate chief incorporation of McClellan as well as Hashmi, I think is listed on 1331 as
Chief
well right now.
patrons, okay.
Yep.
All right. All right, open the roll.
Ayes 15, no 0.
Okay, the combined bills are in front of us. Go ahead, Senator McPike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. So the bill would implement a recommendation from the JLARC 2021 study on the state's affordable housing needs. It would allow all local governments to adopt policy requiring developers of new housing to set aside a portion of units to rent or sell below market. Current law only provides this authority to 7 localities. As a part of JLARC's study, staff reviewed how local zoning ordinance affect the availability of affordable housing. They pointed out that the state law authorizes Virginia localities to implement affordable dwelling unit ordinances, or ADUs. ADU policies allow localities to require or encourage market rate developers to include affordable housing to low and middle income households in a development in exchange for the developer receives an incentive, typically like a density bonus. Right now, the vast majority of localities are only able to adopt voluntary ordinances, meaning that the developers can include affordable housing in the development plans in exchange for incentives, but do not have to. In the past 3 years statewide, only 3 projects, have come out of those voluntary ADU policies. In contrast, 20 projects have arisen from ADU policies that have mandatory ordinances. Under mandatory ADU policies, the developer must include the affordable housing units in exchange for those incentives. This bill would allow all Virginia localities to adopt mandatory ADU programs if they wish. Again, that's the locality option to adopt that ordinance. It simply enables those localities to consider and do so. It would give those localities another tool to help expand the availability of affordable housing projects in their jurisdiction. The bill does not require localities to do anything different with zoning that they have been. It only gives them permission to do so. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, that is the bill. This issue has been before the multiple studies over 10, 15 years, has been studied multiple times. This enables those local governments to enter into the process, because there really has to be a local solution, and this enables them to go through the public process to develop affordable housing. We've heard a lot about in the last year about migration of different folks from different parts of our Commonwealth, and a lot of that has to do with affordable housing, other factors like transportation. But housing is one of those key elements that we've got to tackle, and this gets the ball moving in the right direction to have each of those localities have those local discussions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for Senator McPike from the committee? Is there anyone here to speak in favor of 1141? Yes, Laura.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Laura Bateman, representing the city of Richmond, who is very supportive of this bill. And the city is in the top 3 of localities that have unmet affordable housing needs in the state. They'd love to end this Christmas tree effect and just have the opportunity to be included in this statute. Thank you.
Next.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Isabel McLean with Housing Opportunities Made Equal of Virginia. And we support this bill because inclusionary zoning programs provide greater access to neighborhoods rich with services and amenities. Research has shown that such programs have been effective across the country, and not only increasing the supply of homes, but ensuring that many of those homes are affordable. However, research has also shown that effectiveness is stronger when the program has been tailored to the specific needs of that jurisdiction. And so this bill would give our localities the flexibility, if they choose, in order to achieve that level of effectiveness here in Virginia. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Christy Marrow with the Virginia Poverty Law Center. And we support this legislation for the reasons that you've already heard. And I also want to remind everyone here that according to JLARC, there is a tremendous shortage of both affordable rental units in the 200,000 neighborhood across the state, as well as affordable homes for first-time home buyers. This legislation would allow localities to come up with additional solutions to those problems for their own citizens. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody to speak against 1141? Oh, my.
I know, my favorite time of year. Mr. Chairman, Andrew Clark with the Home Builders Association of Virginia. I don't think anybody disputes that there's a housing crisis, and obviously builders want to be a part and are a part of increasing the supply of housing. Our issue with these programs is that, despite, I think, previous comments, studies looking at the program implemented in Virginia and across the country have shown kind of a mixed bag. Specifically in Virginia, I think Loudoun, in Fairfax, maybe under 100 units a year. Some of the incentives that are imagined or discussed in this bill, density, parking relief, setback relief, those are all perfect. In theory, they work, and I think can help a developer offset the cost of providing below market rate units. But at the end of the day, when a lot of these cases come up to the Planning Commission or the board, those incentives are wiped out. There's no guarantee that the locality actually offers the incentives that help offset the below market rate units. And so I think there's going to be a lot of discussion at the Housing Commission this year looking at local zoning authority, local land use authority, incentives to actually create mixed income communities. And this is, I think, probably the first statute that they need to look at, because it's been discussed, like Senator McPike said, for years. There's legislation every year to add somebody else to the list. But I just think that by adding more localities to this, we're kind of creating this idea that the program has been effective, that it's simple to implement, and that it's producing this wealth of new affordable units compared to a program like tax credits, the housing tax credit that you guys established last year. In 1 year of implementation, it's already financed 600 units. At the federal level, it's financed 100,000 units since its inception. Those are the types of programs that work. So we'd hope that you oppose the bill or send it to the Housing Commission so we can actually start crafting a program that's effective. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator, yeah.
Reeves, question. So we need to change the may to shall and solidify it in code. Would that fix the issue? So we know developers absolutely positively can look at higher density and they don't have to look at all the regulatory mandates that are put in there. Would that solve the issue if we just told everybody you got to do it? Is that an unfunded mandate for them?
Mr. Chairman, I'm assuming you're referring to line 22. I mean, I think my friends in local government may have an issue with that. There's also some provisions in here related to allowing the locality to do design control, prohibiting use of building materials. So I think that does take a step in the right direction. And probably also some work being done to ensure that the right combination and kind of list or menu of incentives is on there. But effectively, that helps ensure or provide some assurance that the applicant, in exchange for providing below market rate units, is able to, build up density or make the site work otherwise. So,
Senator Reed, yes, Senator Favola.
I mean, I will just say the jurisdiction would have to adopt an ordinance here. If you read lines 51 to 55, and there's also language that the jurisdiction in adopting the ordinance set up an advisory committee with a broad range of stakeholders. I mean, this is the kind of thing that localities want to do. They would feel that they have more of standing if they had the legislative authority. This in no way dictates what that policy is going to look like. So to the concerns being raised, I say that this establishes a process that will enable localities to make progress on the creation of affordable housing. Would you disagree with my explanation, Mr. Clark?
Mr. Chairman, I agree that it establishes or gives them the authority to enact an ordinance. I think through the implementation process, both of the actual ordinance and then the actual review of development applications, that's where things kind of fall apart. I mean, in theory, this works, but the incentives that help the developer actually incorporate the units rarely pan out. And so I think there needs to be some level of predictability for both an applicant who says, yes, I'm going to provide below market rate units, to have those incentives that allow the project to work.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick follow-up.
All right, Senator Favola, follow-up.
I'll be very quick. It is in the locality's interest to make this work, and this is not a mandate. This would be a give and take. So there's nothing in here that says thou shalt produce 5 units per acre. And I know you like predictability, but as we went through the proper revision, which I had to carry a few years ago, we learned that developers want to have that give and take with staff. So I think there are guardrails here, and I think the localities will make it work with the developer.
Mr. Chairman.
I've got, wait a minute, Senator Spruill, I've got Senator Donovan queued up first. She's right ahead of you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just kind of to respond to what we've heard in Senator Favola, if it works, it will be a benefit. But I think what we're hearing is, unlike other programs where we have the evidence that it's actually resulting in, available lower cost housing, this program where it has been in place has not worked. And apparently the give and take isn't working. And so in that case, we may need to figure out a way that there's a balance of negotiating power so that some of these things like the parking and the other things that really result in lower cost work. And so we can't pass programs that feel good if they don't work well. And so I'm very interested that the Housing Authority is about to look at this year. We all want this desperately. We want our nurses, our firefighters, our police to have affordable housing, but I'm not interested in passing more legislation that doesn't work. And so I hope we can think about sending this to the Housing Commission and see if we can't get the language that would result in the outcome we all desire.
Senator Sproul.
Thank you. Comment first and a question to my Pike, please. Mr. Chairman, Senator McCullough, Senator Harshman, similar bills to it, trying to resolve a problem. So my question to you, sir, is that how long you been working on this?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Sproul, this issue has been worked on for years. Because you see that the existing bill strikes the other localities. This has been a Christmas tree bill that has been heard before this committee since I've been here. So at least 7, 8, 10 years, if not longer, that this has been a process. And we're trying to eliminate the Christmas tree bill and allow other localities to do the same thing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Sproul.
Knowing that this has been working on for years, you are never satisfy everybody here. So we got to get this out of here. We got to approve something at some time. So it's been going on for years and years. If not this one, then when? Next year, someone else, something different, then when? Will we ever get something out of here? This is a good start. So I'm hoping that we can really approve this one. We got to get something out of here at some time, every year, after year, after year. They're the problem. They're the problem. Nobody's never satisfied. Let's satisfy somebody. We got 3 senators together who are saying that they want this, so we got to start somewhere. And I'm for local government, home builders association, no question about that, but we got to start somewhere. I'm hoping we can get this out of here.
Senator Favola. You didn't have anything?
I didn't
Okay, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman.
Yep, Senator McPike.
If I can respond to some of the, I think the criticisms, I think the criticisms are also on point, probably to the chagrin of some local government. But that's how local ordinances are developed with the local stakeholders. What I know is we do not do well here from this dais is to make very precise local decisions about the economics, about the trade-offs, whether parking is more important than green open space, to mixed use or multi-dwelling units. That's why it enables all the local governments to have those conversations. I personally, I don't know all the context that's right for the communities that you represent. That's why it is delegated authority to the local governments. I don't disagree with Mr. Clark that, in fact, there are some times where a board of supervisors or a city council changes the deal at the last second, and I don't agree with it. I'll be honest with you. If you have an ADU ordinance, Mr. Chairman, that sets out number of units based on FAR and density, they should stick to that guidance, and any denial of an applicant should not be based on those factors. That's clear to me because it's economics. It's economics of that locality. And I've tried to reach out to Mr. Clark and find language to do that. We were not able to come up with that. And so if, Mr. Chairman, what I don't want to do is this goes to study, and we're back out here in this in 2 and 3 and 5 years later. Mr. Chairman, what I would suggest is a delayed enactment of this. That way it gives them 1 year to figure this out, because this has come before this committee over and over and over again. And it's time we need to move the ball forward. So if there's language to fix it, then get it fixed. But we can't go back. We can't have this over and over again. We have to move this forward.
Anybody want to offer an amendment?
Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry. Who's that?
Senator
Hackworth.
Hackworth. I agree. I think that, being in the construction business, this has been beat. I think that we are on the right path. I do share with Andrew's with that, and being on board of supervisors. Sometimes you do have town councils, you've got board of supervisors that can make it difficult. But I would make that motion to have a year.
Delayed enactment?
Yeah, delayed enactment. I'd make that motion, Mr. Chair.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I'll second it, but may I add to that?
Sure, Senator Donovan.
I think there needs to be language that they can't bait and switch. And I don't exactly know what that language is. I'll have to propose it in theory. But I'd like to see that along with this amendment, that if a locality sets forth a proposal, that they can't change that. Can't change they may be able to negotiate other variables, but they can't change the basic variables that are proposed in the measure.
Mr. Chairman, we can, I don't know if it's clear here, but we can articulate that an ordinance would have to, would have to have clarity on the weight given to various factors, which would, in effect, help developers weigh whether they should spend more money on sidewalk improvement versus affordable housing. That would go through a local process, but we can ask that those kinds of factors be articulated clearly. I don't know if, Jeff, I don't know if you can help me. I have an idea, but your idea, I'm sure, will be better.
It wasn't your idea, because I don't know how to draft that.
I mean, maybe we can say something in addition to optional increases in density. The program may also include any combination of the following implementation measures and tools. I would say any.
Can we put bait and switch in there, Jeff?
Can we? Yeah.
No.
And there's also a context in local government about treating projects equally. Our county attorney would always say, well, wait a minute, you approved this project in January, and it's very similar to this project in July, so you really have to approve this project in July. So after thereof, I would say clarity must be given in the ordinance in terms of.
Mr. Chairman, I think we can proceed in theory, but I think she's softer than I am.
Senator DeSteph, do you have something you want to say?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to walk you through, and I've looked at this from around the state, and the reason that even if we do this, it's not going to work is just basic economics. So roughly a third of the cost of building a house is regulation, and it's regulation that we, the General Assembly, have put on the building industry. We've increased the insulation from R30 to R46. We've increased the level of flooring. We've increased the level of everything we can. Then we say, oh, by the way, you have to have these stormwater regulations. So we add all the regulations, that comes up to about, we'll go on 30% of a house, all right? Now, if you look at what's happened in the economy, just basic economics, diesel has gone up almost twice the cost. The cost of building a house with lumber has more than doubled. So if you look at the basic economics of it, with everything doubling, with the increase in everything, the one thing that hasn't increased at the same level of everything in the economy is the consumer salaries. So I've not talked to anyone who's had a 100% increase in their salary, 150% increase in their salary. So then we look at the grant programs, and last year here, we said, hey, you know what? We can take grant programs, we can do the federal stacking with state stacking grant programs. When you run the economics out, you can't charge more than $350 a month for rent. Why? Because you have to include in the formula the cost of living, electricity, food, and all the other basics that you have to have. Well, you can't build anything. And look at interest rates. Interest rates now are 7.5%. We're getting ready to take another 500 to 700 basis points, 750 basis points here in February. You can't make the economics of it work. And frankly, I can't build in a townhouse, I can't build in a small condo, I can't build an apartment at $220 a square foot with all the regulations, with the cost of lumber, the cost of labor, the cost of everything else, and make it work for somebody who makes $50,000 or $60,000 a year, unless I can get my rent to $300 to $400 a month. The basic economics of it don't work.
Senator Favole.
Okay, Mr. Sharp, here's another suggestion I have. On line 22, we say that the program may include any combination of the following, and we list tools that would help create affordable housing. After any combination of the following implementation measures and tools to be agreed upon by both the applicant and the local governing body. Would that assist in this conversation? There has to be agreement by the applicant, which there is. I'm sorry. Agreement is an agreement. If this is what we dealt with in the proffer bill, that there would have to be agreement between the builder and the
Mr.
local
Chairman,
government.
if I could, I appreciate Senator Favola's suggestion. I think the same problem would exist, that theoretically an applicant in going through the process of proffering, but trying to gain agreement, would still have the same issue potentially of submitting the plans and then the final vote getting pulled from the same time. I don't know that we're going to be able to resolve the exact language here, which I think the more simpler form, Mr. Chairman, is just to put the delayed enactment on this and get the stakeholders into the room to gain agreement of how to resolve these issues, or else we're going to be back at this time and time again. The delayed enactment's setting that barrier. You got 1 year to figure it out. I think we've seen this time and time again, and it's time to put a marker on this.
I agree. Anybody, was there a motion?
I'm going to make a motion. I move that we report this bill as amended with the delayed enactment.
Did we adopt the amendment?
Did we adopt the amendment?
No. Yeah, July 1st, 2024?
Yeah.
All right, was there a motion?
Yes, I
And
made
second?
it.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. we have
So
one
now,
more.
again, do you want me to repeat my motion that we report the bill as amended?
Correct. And second. Somebody give me a second. All right. Been moved and seconded that we report not 1524, whatever it is, 1141.
1141.
As amended. Clerk, open the roll.
Ayes 13, noes 2.
Thank you, Senator McPike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Now, we're going out of order here because Senator Rouse has someone here who wants to testify on his 1524, and they can't stay much longer. So I'm going to pull him up first. No, it's on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have an amendment in hand, hopefully be adopted by the committee in place of the introduced bill. Do we
Is
have
it
that?
an amendment or amendment in nature of a substitute? What have we got?
Amendment in nature of a substitute.
Okay. Moved. Seconded. I second that the substitute be adopted. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. Substitute's in front of us. Senator Rouse.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Chairman, this bill comes by way of Virginia Beach City Charter and support. City of Virginia Beach, the majority of city council members support this. What this basically does is say any vacancies on the Virginia Beach City Council shall be filled by special election and not by appointment. Mr. Chairman, a little bit of background information. This was the first year the City of Virginia Beach had district voting, due in large part to a case that was brought to federal courts by Latasha Holloway versus the City of Virginia Beach, which challenged the voting election system in the city. Federal courts deemed that Virginia Beach election system violated Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act and therefore implemented district voting. The City of Virginia Beach, majority of council members was split, decided to appeal that decision. That case was appealed to the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. It was only vacated due to technicalities because the state law had changed in that time span. That was HB 2198 and the Voting Rights Act. And so in an effort to strengthen the democratic process, the former council, the past council, chose to appeal or change its charter by way of vacancies. And I have speakers that can speak to that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any questions for Senator Rouse? All right. Is there anybody here to speak in favor of 1524? Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Deborah Bryan, Legislative Affairs for the City of Virginia Beach. This item was indeed in the City of Virginia Beach's legislative package, and we do support it. Thank you.
Next.
Hello, Andrew Cohen, citizen of Virginia Beach. I just want to speak in favor of this bill for all the reasons that Senator Rouse just said.
Anyone else to speak in favor of 1524? Anyone to speak against 1524? Senator DeSteph, you have a question?
I do, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, Senator Rouse, is this your first bill in front of us?
Oh, boy.
I wish it's my second bill, Senator DeSteph, Mr. Chairman. Senator DeSteph, my second bill.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Rouse, in front of this committee?
Yes, my first bill. Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is your first bill in front of this committee?
It is indeed.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I just want to clarify that before I asked any additional questions, but with that, I do have one additional question. I'm very glad that you provided a substitute, because I had some other questions on the other one, so they've been negated because of this one here, which, trying to find it here. So, do you have a copy of this in front of you?
I do, sir.
Okay, so, Mr. Chair, if I may, to Senator Rouse, on line 13, I believe it's line 13, what's the first letter of the first word after you strike vacancies?
N.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Senator Rouse, on line 16, after the word to, what's the first letter of the next word?
Line 16, you say, sir?
Yes, sir, Mr. Rouse. After the word to, the first two.
Oh.
Oh, Mr. Chair, so I believe that Senator Rouse wants us all to vote no on this bill here, if I'm hearing him correctly from what he just spoke.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much.
All right, thank you,
I have
Senator
no
Stan.
further questions.
Anybody else have any questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Bell.
Senator Rouse, I see a few numbers in here, 60, 120, 55 on various lines of the bill, but I was a little bit surprised that I didn't see the numbers 217, 93, or 12. Can you tell us something about those three numbers?
217, 9, and 12?
217, 93, and 12.
Yeah, so, fortunately, that wasn't the score last night in Kansas City. Eagles game. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to phone a friend here for him, and the esteemed senator had 217 total tackles at Virginia Tech, 93 solo and 12 tackles. He should know those stats.
That is correct. That is correct.
All right, hey, do we have anybody on Zoom to speak to the bill?
We have several speakers on Zoom, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, my. Okay.
Dr. Eric Budget, you may provide your testimony.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Senators. I'm Dr. Eric Majette, the president of the NAACP, the Virginia Beach branch, and we are 100% in support of the SB 1524. We feel that the citizens should have an opportunity to vote, do a special election without having to be appointed.
Thank you. Next.
Gary McCollum, you may provide your testimony.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I want to thank Senator Rouse for bringing this bill. I am a minister, member of the NAACP, the Virginia Beach Interdenominational Ministers Conference, as well as Do the Right Thing. We firmly believe that citizens should choose their councilperson and mayor rather than having them appointed by the council. So we are in support of Senator Aaron Rouse's bill. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
John Moss, you may provide your testimony.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. As a former member of a city council, I was the sponsor of this charter change request, so I'm certainly willing to answer any questions that you may have. I think it's a fundamental principle in our country that the people that represent us in any legislature serve at the consent of the governed. There was a time in Virginia Beach when all the council members were elected by all the citizens, and you could have made the argument, though not one I would have supported, that in fact that all the members voting on an appointment were also elected by the citizens. But today in Virginia Beach, we have an all-district system with the exception of the mayor. So this changes the system because we have special elections for Congress, or the House of Representatives, for the state Senate, and for the House of Delegates. Because why would delegates who aren't elected by the people be appointing someone to represent them when they don't have the consent on voting for those people? So I support this because it's a fundamental principle in our constitutional republic that people that serve in legislatures serve at the consent of the governed, and this bill will allow that to happen, and I appreciate your time and consideration. Stand ready to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Who's next? How many people do we have in line on Zoom?
We have no more speakers, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, move the report.
All right, well, the substitute, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, moved and properly seconded. We report, we've adopted it, 1524, nature substitute. Yeah. Open the roll.
I'm not a Virginia Tech fan.
Ayes 15, no 0.
All right, thank you, Senator Rouse.
Thank you, Chairman.
Senator Boysko, you're next, but can I get Senator Edwards, I think, is Judiciary still meeting over there?
Yes,
All right,
sir.
come on
I
up.
think we definitely are. I have two bills. Senate Bill 1505, requested by the Treasurer of the City of Roanoke, Evelyn Powers, who may be on Zoom. This simply allows the ability to put unpaid solid waste collection charges as a lien on the property, the same way taxes are, the same way water and sewage charges are, charges for trash and other things like that, as opposed to a charge that you have to collect within 3 years, rather than letting it a lien on the property, which runs with the land. That's all it does. And she's on Zoom, I think.
All right, any questions for Senator Edwards? Anybody speak in favor of 1505 in the audience? Anybody on Zoom speak in favor of 1505?
We have one speaker, Mr. Chairman.
All right, let's go.
Evelyn Powers, you may provide your testimony. Evelyn Powers, you may provide your testimony.
Ms. Powers, going once, going twice.
I'm here.
There you go.
I'm here.
Okay, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. The city of Roanoke is asking to make this code change because this is not a new fee. It's something that we've always had for a while, and we put these on a real estate bill with our storm water, and the problem is that it's not consistent with the other fees to where they stay as a lien for 20 years like the real estate, so we're having to write these off after 20 years. So the proposed amendment is not inconsistent with how the law allows for other charges that are incurred by localities to be a lien against the property. I have David Collins, our senior attorney, here with me as well, if anybody has any other questions about that.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone here in the audience to speak against 1505? Uh-oh.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Matt Bruni with the Virginia Bankers Association. Just want to be consistent back when the senator had the bill in 2019, as we always do, want to preserve our lien rights. This is another, stepping above the existing mortgage and being able to put yet another thing on parity with local taxes that are not local taxes that you can then, collect before the mortgage is paid off. So as consistent with everything that, kind of jumps in line with the liens, we don't, on line 35, where it talks about ranking on parity, that's our major concern.
All right. Anybody else to speak against 1505? Any questions on Senate Bill 1505?
Mr. Chairman, I would just simply say taxes are always ahead of the mortgage. So this is just a small additional lien on unpaid solid waste collection charges, which have to be written off if they're not on a lien.
I think it's the old Christmas tree argument, Senator Edwards, I think. But all right, bills in front of us.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Bell.
I guess my question on line 31, if they charge, it caps the interest, which I think is 36%. Can they also charge fees in addition to the interest?
It says charges. It's a charge, a fee, I guess you could call it a charge. It charges a fee, I guess. It's a charge for solid waste disposal. Somebody's got to pay for it. What they're saying now is solid waste collection charges, which somebody has to pay, is being written off, so the city's having to pay it, as opposed to the homeowner having to pay it, which is a homeowner's charge. but they're not paying it after 3 years. If they don't collect it as a collection fee within the 3-year period, that's the problem.
Senator Favole.
I guess I have a question for either the patron or general counsel. On line 35, it says ranking on a parity with liens for unpaid taxes. Why do we have ranking on a parity?
They come before everything else.
Is that important? Well,
it'd
that's
be
his point.
It'd be the same ranking as unpaid taxes. You pay taxes before you pay the mortgage. That's required by law.
So it takes precedence, which is why the bankers are having a concern. But may I ask?
Otherwise, it not getting paid, that's the problem. It's not being paid otherwise.
Senator Foley, you have a follow-up?
Well, if we're talking about waste, if we're really talking about a service, I mean, the city a locality can decide to not provide the service after after there's an extended period of time. I mean, that's another leverage point rather than the lien. And I expect you probably considered that. Of course, there's an impact to not providing garbage. The neighbors might not like the fact that solid waste is not being picked up.
Well,
but did you consider that?
Yeah, water and sewage charges are separate too. I mean, they're lien. This is like another, service.
You're using the same monetary tool that you've used in the past as opposed to the option of not providing a service or.
Cleaning up for trash and weeds, inoperable motor vehicles, dangerous buildings. These are liens too. I mean, that's just adding that to the lien.
All right. Mr. Chairman?
Senator Bell.
A question for council. For instance, government prompt payment, how is that interest determined for what we pay for if we don't pay a bill in a specified amount of time? What would we use? We would use consumer pricing. I mean, what would we use to determine that prevailing interest rate for that?
Would it be judgment rate of interest, Jeff? Or?
Mr. Chairman?
Yep, Senator Bell.
What I'm getting at with that question is I'm okay with the concept, and I think this would be kind of a friendly amendment, I would hope, because right now it's saying that in the event charges are not paid when due, interest thereon shall at the time accrue at the rate determined by the locality not to exceed the maximum allowed by law. So based on my earlier question, they could charge fees, and by maximum allowed by law, the usury laws I think are 36%, if I'm recalling that correctly. I think that could be a little dangerous. I would prefer if we capped it at what we would call the prevailing fair interest rate, which is usually much lower than that. If we did that, I think that would be.
I think it's like 6% or something, isn't it?
That's the judgment rate of interest.
The judgment.
Existing code section says 10% for a local ordinance.
10%. With this, Mr. Chairman?
Yep. Senator Bell.
So are you saying that the maximum allowed would be 10%, or would we have to reference that code section to do that?
Mr. Chairman, section 15.2105 of the code says any person failing to pay pursuant to an ordinance any account due a locality on or before its due date other than taxes which are provided in Title 58.1 may at the option of the locality incur a penalty thereon an amount not exceeding 10%.
Okay.
So they're bound by that.
There's your cap, Senator Bell.
There's your cap.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I guess my question to council, should we reference that code section in line 31?
I would say, Mr. Chairman, you can, but I don't believe that it's necessary. I believe it
yeah, I don't
is
think
bound
it's
anyways.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'm satisfied. Thank you.
Right.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Sproul.
then the key is this, we're in that section of the code. My question is that someone else cannot look at that section of the code and look at they could charge 39. Lawyers change from time to time. So I'm saying, so if someone missed that section of the code, and then they could go up to 69, 36%, if someone does not catch it. That's my question. If someone does not catch that, then a lot of times things do happen that they don't catch it. There's a section of the code that prevents this from happening. My concern was that they could do that unless someone said, oh, wait a minute, another section of the code says you can't do but 10%. That's what I want to try to make sure, as Senator Bell has said, that we have it in both places, so to make sure that there cannot be a mistake made next year that someone may not catch that if some of y'all are not here.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Hackworth.
So I think the problem I've got with this is the same as what the bankers was saying, that on parity with the liens. So, I mean, what about next year if they say, okay, utilities, let's put that in there. And then we keep adding on to this. I mean, when you get your deed of trust and you know, they get surpassed by some of these things, I think that's the issue that we're seeing. We keep adding on to this. So I couldn't support this the way that it's written.
All right. Anybody else? All right, the bill's in front of us.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we report Senate Bill 1505. Clerk, open the roll.
Ayes 7, noes 8.
All right, Senator Edwards' bill fails to report.
Okay, thank you.
You've got another one.
Yeah, I do have one more. This has to do with plastics. Right now, these localities have the option of charging 5 cents for plastic bags at the grocery store. What happens is 2 cents goes to the grocery and 3 cents goes to a fund. This gives the localities an option, just ban plastic bags at the grocery store. It defines plastic bags as single-use plastic bags, but it's an option that the localities can have to say, we're not going to charge, but we're not going to allow plastic bags. Use paper. I always get paper anyway, and so it would allow the localities, if they want, to say no plastic bags like they do now. Instead, just say no bags, called brown bags, no paper bag, only paper bags, not plastic bags. Just ban plastic bags, period. So you don't have to pay a nickel. You don't have to pay anything. And that's what I always do anyway. It's not really working. In Roanoke City, they have passed this rule that says if you're going to take plastic, you got to pay 5 cents. So Kroger is charging 5 cents for plastic bags and also for paper sometimes. And sometimes they don't charge at all. Because last time at the grocery store the other day, the registrar said it's too complicated for them to do it. So just take the bag, plastic or paper. If you're going to actually make a difference, give the localities the option, if they want, to just ban plastic bags. Period.
All right, Senator Edwards, do you have an amendment?
There's a small amendment, I believe, that clarifies something. I believe there is. It just says on line 31, after bag, strike that is not recyclable. That's a line amendment, line 31.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt the amendment.
Moved and seconded, we adopt the amendment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right.
So again, this is an option for localities if they want to do it.
Senator Hackworth, do you have something?
I do, yes. Mr. Chair, Senator Edwards, you know, this is, I was reminded when I went to the local grocery store there last night, and we was carrying out the paper bags, and I remember several years ago they was in danger because we were killing, I guess, too many trees and different things of that, and then we went from paper to plastic, and now we're saying plastic, and I just think it's a very, you know, when that you're giving them the authority to do this, it's very, we're going down a risky path, and so I couldn't.
Here's the problem with plastics. It's a worldwide problem. It's a huge worldwide problem. They found plastics in the deepest part of the Pacific Ocean, 1,000 miles from anywhere, like 6 miles down, in the livable objects. That's how bad plastic is, and it's not biodegradable. Paper is. It's not. That's the problem with plastics. It's a worldwide problem. We need to do something about plastics. Abolish all plastics. It's not going to happen overnight, obviously. So we need to do something to give the localities the authority to say, don't use plastic. Use paper. Right now, you got to charge, if they want to, 5 cents for plastic bags. And
anybody speak in favor of Senate Bill 933? Yes, ma'am. Come on up.
Hi, I'm Ellie Bamer Wilson with Environment Virginia. We're strongly in support of this bill. It gives localities another tool in their toolbox to combat plastic pollution. Plastic pollution has a lot of issues, and plastic bags are one of the top contributors. It's the fourth most littered item in Virginia, and they cause a lot of operational issues. So we know the environmental issues, but the cost to produce a plastic bag is about a penny. It costs 10 to 20 cents to manage and dispose of that after. So economically, it doesn't really make sense that we're spending all this money after the fact dealing with plastic bags that ultimately are ending up in our environment for generations to come. They're also one of the top contaminants in single stream recycling. So all the materials that we actually can recycle in Virginia, plastic bags are the ones that are causing issues in actually being able to recycle those materials. So plastic bags are just really one of those types of plastics that are particularly harmful for a lot of reasons, and by getting rid of them for good would be a great option, and giving localities this ability would be wonderful.
I agree with everything you said. I hate plastic bags. But let me ask you this.
Yes.
Didn't we just go down this road, big discussion 2 years ago on this?
Yes, you did. Yeah, the bill that passed 2 years ago, it started off as a ban, and many localities, as they've been passing this fee, they don't want to do the fee, so.
Just let me ask you this. Didn't everybody get together in a room and kind of hash all this out and all that stuff? Were you in the room?
I wasn't in the room, but I mean, this will still be an issue.
I'm not meaning to put you on the spot, but when we have these big things and we hash them out and then we turn around and come back 12, 24 months later, there's a little bit of a credibility issue there, so.
Sure.
I'm not beating you up. I'm just saying.
Sure,
Okay.
Absolutely. But it'll continue to be an environmental issue, so
I
it'll
agree with
continue to be something that
Agree
will
with you
be brought up.
100%. All right.
Well, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Favola.
Again, it's any locality made by duly adopted ordinance. So you're providing enabling legislation to localities. They will have to go through an administrative process to adopt the ordinance. There will be lots of public comment from retailers and from environmentalists and consumers. So I think this is, a locality can choose to implement this authority or not. I think this is a reasonable bill.
Mr. Chairman, I'm also saying it's really not working the way it is, at least in my area.
Anyway, okay. Anybody else to speak in favor? Anybody speak against Senate Bill 933?
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Mike Carlin on behalf of the Coalition for Consumer Choices. And it's a coalition of 10 statewide associations and 5 chambers of commerce who support initiatives to create a robust recycling industry in Virginia. And our vision is that Virginia work toward and become a top-tier state for recycling industry investment and capabilities. We believe that SB 933 sends the wrong message to this industry and is a deterrent to their investment in our state. By banning plastic, which can be recycled, I think the recycling industry would disagree with previous comments. They absolutely can be recycled. We're sending them the wrong message. Further, the comment about the agreement. There was an agreement. All stakeholders were in the room. It was a very contentious issue 3 years ago, whether or not you should be able to ban or tax bags. And finally, there was an agreement, and I think nobody liked it, but it was allowed the taxation of plastic bags. 10 jurisdictions, I understand, have already passed the tax in Virginia. And so we would ask, it's only been 3 years, we would ask we give that solution a chance as well. Thank you.
Senator Reeves, you got a question? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, the comment was made, and I don't know who made it on the dais up there. The lectern said it is not working. What's working in the city of Fredericksburg, because I represent the city of Fredericksburg. In fact, I have an article here that talks about how the 5-cent tax, city council officials originally expected to receive about $24,000 from its 5-cent tax. Out of January through April, it already topped over 30, and they think it's going to go up to $41,000 in additional revenue to the city for that tax. So it's working there, and they're getting a lot of tax money from it.
All right, next.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Clark Lewis Troutman Pepper representing the Recyclable
Plastic Bag Alliance. Support the comments of Mr. Carlin. The only thing I would add is that, Mr. Chairman, Senator Reeves, 10 jurisdictions, I understand, have adopted the tax. And this was a little bit of a delay because this legislation was passed right before COVID. COVID slowed us down a little bit, and jurisdictions are quickly considering this issue. So with great respect to the senator, we would oppose the bill. And I was in the room for the great compromise, and it was a great compromise. And we ask that you support that. Thank you.
Next.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Melissa Aslan with the Virginia Food Industry Association, representing grocery retailers across the Commonwealth. I'll be brief, and I'll just echo the comments from the previous speakers. We oppose this legislation. Grocery stores in Virginia are continuously working to raise awareness with consumers on the benefits of using reusable bags, and we just ask that you oppose this bill. Thank you.
Next.
Kate Baker with Two Capitals Consulting on behalf of Virginia Retail Federation, and I would echo the comments of the previous speakers. We also oppose.
All right, is there anybody on Zoom?
We have speakers on Zoom, Mr. Chair.
Oh, my. Okay, go ahead.
Zach Huntington, you may provide your testimony.
Be brief, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Zach Huntington. I'm the Associate Director of Clean Virginia Waterways. We support this legislation. We thank Senator Edwards for his focus on solutions to combat the plastic pollution crisis. The solution to the plastic pollution crisis is simply to produce less plastic. We cannot recycle our way out of the plastic pollution crisis. So the lowest estimate for the number of single-use plastic bags that are going to be used in Virginia this year is over 700 million. There's no way we can recycle 700 million single-use plastic bags. According to the EPA, no more than 3% of single-use plastic bags are recycled. That's 21 million. That's a whole lot of plastic bags that are not getting recycled.
All right, you're going to have to wrap up. We're running out of time here.
Okay, single-use plastic bags are not available until 1979, and we still can't recycle them. We've given recycling a chance. It's time to get rid of plastic.
All right,
thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next.
Vic Nichols, you may provide your testimony.
If you live on one of the border counties, which I do, it becomes a true pain to have to sit there and go, I'm in one place, I got to do something. I'm in one place, I got to do something else. Back and forth is just too much to remember. The other thing is, one thing I have seen that is very bad is sometimes they'll charge you, sometimes they don't. When they shouldn't charge you, having to get it kicked out.
All right, Ms. Nichols.
There's a lot of problems there.
All right, Ms. Nichols,
Thank you.
we get your point. Next.
There are no more speakers, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Senator Edwards, you got anything you want to say?
No, I think it's a local option. That's all it is.
Okay. Bill's in front of us.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we report the bill as amended.
Moved and properly seconded that we report 933 as amended. Clerk, open the roll.
Ayes 6, noes 9.
All right, Senator Edwards, you can get back to judiciary now.
Okay.
Thank you. Senator Boysko.
I hope you all have a bunch of bills in our committee.
Senator Boysko.
Wow. Ooh. Deep cleansing breath, everybody. Mr. Chairman, today I bring you SB 1329. It is a local government planning bill that seeks to give localities the authority as only a local option to plan for electric vehicle charging station requirements to increase infrastructure across the Commonwealth. In essence, this bill will allow localities by ordinance, if they choose, but not required, an ordinance to require EV charging stations in 3 different types of developments: in commercial, in industrial, and multi-residence, which is a density of 7 units per acre or greater. There are some localities that are undergoing zoning ordinance rewrites, and they have proposed requirements for EV parking spaces, but these localities do not currently have the authority to dictate EV charging infrastructure on their new projects, and this bill would remedy that problem. The bill only applies to new construction. It would not apply retroactively, and based on current Virginia trends, Virginia's residents will be, we have to look at the market. Virginia's residents will be increasingly reliant on electric vehicles in the future. Since 2011, EV sales in the U.S. have experienced steady growth. That growth found momentum in 2018 and skyrocketed in 2021, with EV sales growing by 85% between 2020 and 2021. And in order for Virginia to remain the best place to live, work, and do business, localities have to have this flexibility to provide for EV charging stations in agreed upon areas. The bill empowers localities who know their jurisdictions the very best to work with their staff and their stakeholders to set parameters for electric vehicle charging. Additionally, this bill provides appropriate flexibility based on regional sensitivities in the Commonwealth. So smaller jurisdictions, rural areas that may not have a large number of EVs don't have to enact these ordinances, and their localities would remain untouched if that's the will of their leaders. There are opponents of the bill, and I've had a lot of conversations over the weekend, opponents who are saying that this is building code creep, and they ask to handle these issues at the Board of Housing and Community Development. I mean, I think really we're talking because they oppose it on cost. But I would like to point out that it's too late to handle these issues at the BHCD. The next building code cycle is in 3 years. So that would leave us with no answer on this for another 3 years. And it's too late. This is going to be a real major problem by then, because we know that EV infrastructure is growing. We need to make sure that our locality can meet the needs of the people who live there. And I want to point out that federal action is making the timing right on this bill. There have been significant investments, such as the bipartisan infrastructure law, which include a total of $7.5 billion dedicated to funding to help make EV chargers accessible to all Americans for local to long-distance trips. And that $7.5 billion is comprised of $5 billion formula program and a $2.5 billion discretionary grant program. You know, we often talk about an ad hoc approach, and we just can't do that anymore. We've got to have the ability for our localities to ensure adequate coverage in our communities. I have 2 specific witnesses. One is Loudoun County Fire Chief Keith Johnson. He's very familiar with the statewide building code development process. He served on that body, and he would like to speak about why this approach is best in the name of fire safety. I also have Leo Rogers, the county attorney from Loudoun, online to testify. And I know that environmental groups and utility companies do not have any opposition to this bill and could answer technical questions.
Okay, Senator Boyce, go ahead. Senator DeStefano has a question.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I was trying to get my mic on. So I have actually a couple of questions which I think you'll be able to answer, so I'm just going to kind of run through them.
Sure.
But what level chargers are you going to require?
Mr. Chairman, Senator DeStefano, that is not a part of this bill. That would be the locality making those kinds of decisions.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, 2 or 3 quick follow-ups. Who's going to pay for the electricity that's used?
Mr. Chairman, Senator DeStefano, I have the county attorney on the line who might be able to answer. I would imagine the end user would pay for
All right, is there somebody
the electricity,
online?
but I'm not an expert in this.
Somebody in the Zoom room who can answer Senator DeStefano's question?
Mr. Rogers, you may speak on the bill.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I want to thank Senator Boyce for bringing this. This is a local option bill, would be enforced in zoning only for new construction. The nature of the electric charging station would vary based on the usage. For instance, I would see in a multifamily usage, it'd be more of a destination charger or the local charger, and then the destination charger you might find more often at, say, gas stations or commercial establishments. And truly, we would let the property owner decide how the facility would be paid for. Often we're finding these come out in parking garages where you can get the destination charger from the parking garage and the user would pay for them themselves. It could be an amenity for multifamily housing. Either one would be a possibility.
Mr. Chairman, one or two more quick
Senator
questions.
DeStefano.
So who's going to pay for the installation and then the infrastructure upgrade? So let me walk you through the kind of difference on this, and then I'm going to walk you through what I see, because I've put a couple of these in at my house, at my office. I'm getting ready to put in 10 chargers at one of the developments I'm getting ready to do, but I know what the costs are. So for me, when I'm leasing to individuals, I'm telling them that that's part of your CAM on this.
Senator DeStefano, I'm going to defer to the patron, but again, I think all of that detail would be in the local ordinance. But
Madam,
Senator Boyce.
Yes, Senator Favola, Senator DeStefano. This is a local option bill. It does not get into the weeds on all of those parameters, and I would expect that the experts who are working on this in their communities would be the ones who would make those final determinations. That is not the nature of this bill.
Madam Chair,
Senator
Senator Boysko, completely understand. I do this by choice. We're going to have localities require this. So,
A locality may, Senator DeStef, you know it is local option. A locality may or may not require it, and if they do choose to require it, they may decide that it's for larger projects only, or whatever determination they might wish to carve out.
Madam Chair, again,
Did
but the
Senator Steph-
localities are going to take the option, and they'll require builders to do this. They'll require developers to do this. And it's not just when you do a new project. So when I have the electrical brought into
Mr.
my
Chair, this is-
development,
M-
I'm
Madam-
not quite finished yet, Madam Chair.
Oh, go ahead, Senator
When I bring
DeStef.
the power into my single-family home, my apartment complex, my condo development, my commercial buildings that I'm doing in an office park, I know what the cost of infrastructure is going to be. As soon as I add this requirement for every car that's charged per month, that when folks drive in, they charge up at work, they drive home, it's $182 per month. And that's what I've seen over 2 years, and that's per car. Now, these vehicles rotate through, so in one of my developments with 2 chargers, it costs me about $30,000 a year. I understand that, and I pass that back to those who lease from me as part of the condo. Now, when I installed those, I had to pay the power company and those doing the development about an extra $8,000 because I had to increase the size of the power that was coming on.
It will
Now,
be a project
additionally-
development cost. You are correct.
Madam Chair.
There's no debate about that.
So when I'm asking this, when I say who's paying for the electricity, who's paying for the installation, who's paying for the upgrade of this, because when you put it in on certain places, if it's, for example, with Dominion, if I don't have enough power coming down the street and I'm going to put in 15 of these, then I'm going to have to pay for the upgrade of not just what I'm doing on my site, but I'm going to have to pay for the additional transformers and the additional power generation. And I'm just saying there's a significant cost with this that I want to make sure we understand. I understand it's a local option, but the localities, we're giving them the option of requiring people to do this, which again, we've just talked about. We have a problem with finding affordable housing. As soon as you require this in an apartment complex or a condo association, you've just added additional regulation to drive up those costs further, making it further and less affordable to those individuals.
How do you really feel, Senator DeStef?
I feel that in my developments where I do it, it's my choice to do it by choice.
I think you're going to have
I
some
don't want a
other folks
locality
who
to say, we dictate you do this.
I think you'll probably have other folks who echo that point. But Senator Boysko, do you want to respond?
Mr. Chair, I will just reiterate, this is a local option, and it is only on brand-new development, not retrofitting anything. And again, the localities have the expertise and the folks, the stakeholders in their communities who can make those decisions and determinations for themselves. That's not what I'm trying to do here today.
Okay. Any other questions for Senator Boysko before we go to comment? All right. Anybody speak in favor of 1312?
This is Chief Johnston from Loudoun County.
No.
So, Senator Boysko, thank you, and Chairman, thank you.
Whoa. We've got live people who actually made a point to get here today, so we're going to talk to them first. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Chris Sigler representing Fairfax County. Fairfax County supports the bill. Under current law, by 2035, 100% of all new vehicles sold in the Commonwealth are going to be electric vehicles. And so I think we have to get past the point where we're looking at, I understand that cost is always an issue, and it's an issue in development, clearly. But we have to get past the point where we're worrying about the cost of putting this infrastructure into place. And as Senator Boysko has said, this is a local option. And I don't know that I can address all of Senator DeStef's concerns, but in Fairfax County, we have a very robust process when we enact local authority like this. We speak to the development community, we bring all stakeholders to the table, and we try to put an ordinance together that addresses the types of concerns that Senator DeSteph is concerned about. So we think we'll be able to implement this authority once it's enacted, and we think it's ultimately a good thing in reaching that 2035 goal. So we support the bill.
Let me ask you this. I mean, have you all done anything in Fairfax, to incentivize the installation of these?
So that's something we're actually working on currently to incentivize these types of things. Again, we see this, I always hate to use the tool in the toolbox thing, but this is a tool in the toolbox thing. It's not the camel's nose under the tent, it's a tool in the toolbox thing. And we think we can use this authority in conjunction with the other things we're working on to increase electric charging vehicle stations throughout the county.
Okay. Anybody else to speak in favor? All right, anybody on Zoom that wants to speak in favor? Be brief.
Mr. Johnson, you may provide your testimony.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Committee. Keith Johnson, Fire Chief here in Loudoun County. I also do sit on the Board of Housing and Community Development here representing Loudoun County. We support the bill. There have been questions about fire safety of electric vehicles, electric vehicle charging stations. We've had fires with electric vehicles and charging stations. We believe this is a safer option. It provides a locality through a site plan process to be able to provide, again, that subject matter expertise and dictate how the power is brought in, where these would be placed. Again, we have very requirements of where these would be placed to enhance fire safety. So we believe that allowing the locality and having through the plans review process, which the Fire Marshal's Office and locality is part of, we would make it safer for electric vehicles. They're coming, we see them every day, and we believe this would be a safer option.
All right, next, anybody else on Zoom?
We have no more speakers, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody speak against 1312?
We have a speaker on Zoom against the bill, Mr. Chairman.
All right, let's do the live people first. Phil.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Phil Abraham, representative Virginia Association for Commercial Real Estate, Commercial Industrial Developers in Northern Virginia, Hampton Roads, and Richmond area. For many of the reasons as Senator DeSteph mentioned, we do oppose this legislation. Like so many other characteristics of a building, we believe electric vehicle charging or conduit should be required as part of the building code process. This bill lacks any parameters on limits on what these requirements can be. What level charger do you have? How many? Are we going to be required to provide these for free, or can you charge? There is a ton of federal money coming in for this, which will pay for a lot of this infrastructure to be built without local mandates. And local incentive programs and the proffer process is providing for a lot of these chargers to be installed. So for all these reasons, we believe you should not approve this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Tommy Herbert representing the Virginia Apartment Management Association as well on behalf of our sister organization, the Apartment and Office Building Association of Metropolitan Washington. For the reasons previously stated, we ask you to oppose the bill.
Okay. Next.
Not nearly that fast. That was impressive. Andrew Clark of the Home Builders Association of Virginia. Like the patron had mentioned, yes, we do have concerns that we would essentially be allowing localities to override the statewide building code. And we've consistently opposed bills to roll back energy efficiency requirements and bills that would make them stricter because we have a statewide building code established by a regulatory process. This would allow localities to do case-by-case building code requirements on new developments and
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Favola.
I just have a question for General Counsel. It's all this does is allows the locality to, by ordinance, going through a very rigorous administrative process to determine where these electric charging vehicles may be, what kind of project, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
I don't think it gives the authority to localities to override any kind of building code, but that's my question to staff.
Mr. Chairman, I wouldn't necessarily say it overrides the building code. The building code is a creation of the legislature as well. So I'm not really quite sure how else to answer that question.
If I could, Andrew, Mr. Chairman, I think California is probably the state that's leading on EVs. Everybody would recognize that. And that state actually has put in place a pretty rigorous process to set a baseline standard for wiring and other components of EVs. I think they even dive into parking spaces and a lot of other different components. So there is a certainly a building code implication for having these inside.
Mr. Chair. Senator Rouse was up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As a former councilman, not even a few months ago, with every site plan comes a parking study. And so all this does is gives localities the option when a parking study or a new development comes around to look at the site plan to see, obviously how many EVs you can put forth in the site plan to see if it's applicable. This is all this, to me, this bill is asking is just to give localities that option with new developments, not retrofitting old developments, but with new developments. And with the ever advancing and expanding EV market, this is a great bill to be proactive in that sense. I can imagine if this bill was not in place and the EV market expands at such a rate, you'll probably have developers that you'll be representing coming back saying, hey, we need to make sure we have some legislation to put in place so we can have EV stations to charge our cars. So again, this is just a local option that gives localities the tools and the necessary vision to incorporate in future developments the options to have EV charging stations. There is a cost would be associated with it, but as the prior member who opposed it said, there's a lot of federal money coming down to help with that. Thank you.
Senator Hackworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And at the risk of angering my neighbor in the Pocahontas building, she may kick me out, but I would just like to say that one of the things I think that you could see here is, especially in rural areas, we are always looking to do these type of projects, especially on new construction. But if an ordinance is passed, and then when you get to the utility companies and they say, we don't have enough power to be able to do this in this locality. So then it's a huge upgrade in the substations and things like that. I think that is where that we would see that problem happening in our localities is because we're having that problem now. Is we don't have enough power in certain localities that is buildable. We have a lot of mountains and we have a lot of topography, so building has to be in specific areas. And when that you have that and an ordinance is already in place that is requiring you to do this, I think that could stop development actually if that was in there.
Mr. Chair, Senator Hackworth, my next door neighbor. I just want to point out again, there is a robust process for approving any sort of a development plan. And it would include stakeholders from the power company, from the building community, from this is not saying that anybody is going to slam an ordinance down the throats of a locality that doesn't want it. Of course, they would bring the stakeholders, including the power company, to the table. And perhaps, if there were a problem with the power adoption, the energy company would make that clear to the locality and would probably change their minds about proposing the ordinance itself at that time.
I think
we've got to just make sure that we are respecting our locality's ability to have.
Mr. Chair, I think the word that gives me pause is probably, because you could have boards that say, well, we're going to do this, and now power company, you figure it out, or developer, you figure it out, because you can be very progressive. We want to be progressive, but when you give them the authority to make this ordinance, sometimes it don't mean that they listen to the stakeholders because they want to progress this. So that's why that I would be against it.
Mr. Chair, I appreciate the comments. Having been a staffer on land use and transportation at the local level in my jurisdiction, I remember hours and hours and months of stakeholder meetings where we made certain that everybody was heard, that we were doing the best thing for the community, considering what the parameters and limitations were of the community. I would hope that we will move this forward.
Sounds like a spike fence is going up on the
I have
floor.
a motion. Given some of the concerns that have been raised, it makes me even more inclined to vote for this bill, because I think developers and others, in an effort to market to the millennials, might be putting in these electric charging stations on their own without any just voluntarily, without any coordination with localities or anybody else. And I actually think it's probably time that local governments have a robust conversation on this.
Mr.
So
Chairman.
I'm going to move that we report the bill.
Senator Bell.
First, let me say I like the bill. I support the bill. My concern is about the charging standards. And I know you don't want to get in the weeds in this, but my question to you is the Department of Transportation has suggested and trying to get federal standards, which I think we badly need, and they're asking that they have at least 4 ports of fast charging at 150 kilowatts minimum. Would you be open as a friendly amendment that we have something in here about that they adopt federal standards? And the reason why I bring this up is, as an owner of 2 EVs, I will tell you having a million different standards is a problem, and I think the more we go in those different directions, the more problematic it's going to be. And the way the bill's written, I know it's up to the localities, but in some cases they could simply put a 110-volt outlet, and that would be considered a charging station, and most people with an EV would consider that highly inadequate. The other issue is if they don't do some sort of a federal standard, I think there's a good chance while they intend to provide the charging stations, they may not actually satisfy very many people who will need it. So without trying to get into the weeds, I ask that question, would you be willing to put something in that would generically reference a federal standard? And I think the best one is probably what they just authorized in the Inflation Reduction Act.
Mr. Chairman, assuming that the locality that requested the bill does not have an opposition to adopting such an amendment, I would support. Leo Rogers, the county attorney for Loudoun, I think is still on the phone. Just
Mr. Rogers?
Want to phone a friend real fast to make sure we're not.
Mr. Rogers, are you there? Speak up.
Mr. Rogers, you may provide your testimony. Mr. Rogers, you may speak on the bill.
Thank you. Yes, we would not have any problems with that at all, meeting either state or federal standards for installation.
All right, you've answered the question. Senator Bell.
Thank you.
So you're making a motion to meet state and federal standards.
I don't know if we have any state standards, but I offer as amendment that I don't know how best council can do it. Maybe we would have to do this in theory, and work it as we go forward, but that we adopt, that we add in there federal standards. Looking at it, I'm trying to figure out what the best place.
I would also add state standards too, since that came up.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Dista.
If we're going to add standards to this, and I have an EV, so I'm also an EE, we need to follow the IEEE standards to make sure that we're putting the correct wire in when we're doing this and having electrician do it the proper way.
All right.
So the IEEE standard has what's required.
We're over our heads.
Maybe,
we're way over our heads.
Maybe, Mr. Chairman, if we, in good faith, if the patron agrees to maybe make an amendment on the floor, my motion stands that we report this, and maybe the patron has heard this conversation and come up with an amendment on the floor.
Mr. Chair, I would only ask the council would please just craft some sort of amendment that hopefully meets these.
Let me speak to the motion.
For the floor.
Let me speak to the motion. All right, all for it. But love EVs. All for them. Just 2 or 3 things that I have a little bit of a problem with at this juncture, and that is, number one, I think the building code is the appropriate place to handle this stuff. Number 2, we do have a whole lot of federal money coming to help us with this infrastructure. And number 3, based on what Fairfax County is telling me, there exists an array of incentives that localities can use to facilitate and push along these EV charging installations. So they're the only things that give me pause. I think it's just a matter of timing, not that there's anything wrong with your bill. That's my thought. So,
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Dillon.
Just to follow up on that, it just seems ironic that we're talking about finding ways to decrease the burden on builders to reduce the cost of housing, and meanwhile, at the same time, trying to add additional burden to builds and giving ordinances that can mandate that part. And so I just agree. I think this is too soon.
Mr. Chairman, before we vote on my motion, I have a suggested amendment that we can put in place now, which would be a delayed enactment until, I would say, July 1, 2024.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. We put a delayed enactment clause on it till July 1, 2024. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Senator McPike, you got something you want to say?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, while I agree that the Code Commission should deal with a normal course of action of things, I think this is a little bit different in the fact that actually with affordable housing, actually EVs are actually becoming much more affordable. And there are some really important things that reduce your long-term fuel costs. So from a zoning standpoint, I do think it's necessary because there are the complexities that localities need to figure out in terms of multifamily, townhouse, other things. And it is at the local zoning area that this needs to be resolved of how to do the appropriate setup. I don't disagree. Yes, we should follow, federal J standard plugs, and I think that'll work itself out. But I do think it's at the local level to start to resolve this because the market is expanding quicker than our zoning ordinances will keep up with it. And this is important to do now. I sort of accepted the amendment to delay it. I don't really agree with that either because I think this is something localities need to really start to step up with and start to deal with now. And I appreciate the patrons' bill and support the measure. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, I will amend my own motion, and my motion is that we report this bill as amended.
All right, been moved and seconded that we report Senate Bill 1312 as amended.
Ayes 9, noes 6.
Thank you. Thank you.
Committee and Senator Vivola, I'll hand the gavel over to you. Okay. I'm going to start with 1163, if that's all right with the chair.
Sure.
All right, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman, members of the committee, Senate Bill 1163 is pretty straightforward, pretty simple. It just seeks to add the county of Accomack on Virginia's eastern shore to a statute originally enacted regarding the city of Richmond's ability to authorize a community revitalization fund, and it would be the repository for local funds and would allow the locality to prevent and respond to neighborhood deterioration. They had a situation in Accomack County where they had a private group that wanted to help remediate and clean up a challenged, deteriorated area, and they were unable to do so, unable to assemble the funds. And so this would allow them to do that. And that's it, plain and simple, Madam Chair.
This seems very direct, and I don't think we need public comment. If there is somebody from Accomack here who wants to stand up and say why you need it, the mic's open, and I don't see anybody here. So this bill is very straightforward. A motion has been made and seconded. Will the clerk please open the roll?
One minute.
Senator Lewis,
Hang on a second.
please vote.
Voting for 3 people here. I'm voting, but it's not going through.
I can add your vote in.
You can do it?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Thank you,
Ayes
Madam Chair.
15, noes 0.
Okay, Senator Lewis, what's your next bill?
Next up, Madam Chair, is Senate Bill 1185. And this bill, Madam Chair, extends the moratorium on city annexations until 2032. In 2016, the General Assembly extended the current moratorium until 2024 and simultaneously directed the Commission on Local Government to evaluate the structure of cities and counties in the Commonwealth and the impact of annexation upon localities. The report from the Commission on Local Government concluded that granting cities the ability to annex in the future to be a very low probability and an ineffective solution to addressing changes in the economy, population growth, development, and service demands. Counties now provide the same types of urban services, police, transit, water, and sewer services that independent cities do. This makes city annexation of county land problematic, particularly for the reason that it results in the erosion of the necessary tax base that these counties rely on to provide these services. So that's the bill, Madam Chair.
Okay, I'm going to ask quickly if there are any comments in favor of this bill. Please be very brief. Mr. Lurch, welcome.
Madam Chair, VACO supports the bill, Virginia Association of Counties, and thanks the patron. Thank you.
Okay. Welcome.
Madam Chair, Mr. Chairman, yes. Kelly Harris-Braxton, Virginia First Cities Coalition. And while we don't support the bill, we don't oppose the bill either. We just wanted to make sure that it's clear the reason the reason that we are here is that we want to make sure that our legislators recognize that the promise that was made for the annexation moratorium was to fund things like 599 specifically and others. And we want to make sure that that's not forgotten. The language, says that the moratorium doesn't end if you don't pay all the resources out that you're supposed to pay. And we certainly want to make sure that we keep that in mind. Okay.
I think we addressed that. Senator Lewis, do you want to respond?
No, I think that it's
addressed.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for your comments.
Yeah.
Elizabeth Parker.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Elizabeth Parker with Troutman Pepper Strategies here on behalf of Virginia's electric cooperatives. We support the bill and thank the patron for bringing it.
Thank you. Is there anybody in the audience in opposition to this bill? Seeing none, is there anybody on Zoom who would like to speak either in favor or in opposition?
Anyone on Zoom who would like to speak on the bill, you may raise your hand. We have no speakers, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Motion has been made to report. Is there a second? Okay. Will the clerk please open the roll?
Ayes 15, no 0.
Okay. Senator Lewis, your bill reports. Is
Thank you,
there
Madam
another
Chair.
one?
Senate Bill 1205, Madam Chair.
Okay.
This is a bill which seeks to extend development projects to July 1, 2025. The approvals, inflation and global supply chain shortages, shifts in the labor force, all of these things are factors going back to the COVID pandemic, which have caused problems with some of these projects and their development, and they could not have been anticipated in the aftermath. First, the COVID pandemic itself, and then these problems in the aftermath of it, largely resulting from the pandemic itself. And these factors were not anticipated when a project was originally approved, and as a result, the applicants have had to reassess whether to move forward in these times or to wait until the economy settles down. So what this bill does is extend the validity of those permits to July 1, 2025, as we did in 2020 and 2022. And this extension is only granted to approvals that were valid as of July 1, 2020. So it is much narrower than the extension we granted in the wake of the housing crisis.
Okay. Motion has been made and seconded.
There is no amendment.
No, right.
I'm sorry.
Three technical.
Technical amendments.
Could you read those
no technical amendments either.
Could you read those technical amendments?
Never mind. I withdraw the amendment.
Madam Chair, the three technical amendments simply remove the reference to COVID-19.
No, we're not offering those amendments.
We're not. Okay.
I withdraw the motion.
Sorry. Sorry.
Apologies.
No
That's
worries.
Some confusion. Sorry.
Okay, colleagues, the bill is introduced, is in front of us.
Move the report.
Okay, are there any speakers here? Pro? Pro and con.
Yes, pro, Madam Chair. Scott McGrady, Washington Gas. We support the bill. Think it's realistic and will help the economy of the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Chip Dixon. I've been
Chip
authorized to speak on behalf of a number of folks. The home builders are here, Chesapeake Energy and Storage, Virginia Realtors, Virginia Association of Commercial Real Estate, Northern Virginia Apartment Association, Virginia Apartment Management Association, Apartment Office Building Association, and the Virginia Manufactured Housing Association.
Thank you. And all in favor?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Lurch, you might have another opinion.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, and I'll make it brief because it's been a long morning. We've opposed this in the past 2 times when it's been extended, and our basic argument is this, is localities have been meeting throughout the pandemic, their planning commissions and boards, been approving plans, and we have the ability at the local level and have been administratively making extensions. Our problem with now continuing until 2025 is there are projects that were valid as of July 1st, 2020 that expired that had nothing to do with the reasons for the pandemic. Not a lot, but there's a few. And so our concern is we're further extending those projects. So for those reasons, we oppose the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lurch. Is there anybody in Zoom who would like to speak either in favor or in opposition?
Anyone on Zoom who would like to speak on the bill, you may raise your hand. We have no speakers. Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Colleagues, the action is now with us on the committee. Okay, motion has been made and seconded to report. Will the clerk please open the roll?
Ayes 15, no 0.
Senator Lewis, your bill reports.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And finally, Madam Chair, I have Senate Bill 1394.
Senate Bill 1394. Yes, Madam Chair. And this bill comes again from Accomack County. It's one of our leading agricultural producers in the Commonwealth, and most of the county, as you might imagine, is zoned agricultural. Within those agricultural zones, there are small communities that look very much like communities that you would find in any incorporated town. But because these communities are zoned ag, the code prohibits the county from establishing maximum grass heights or clutter restrictions in these areas. All it takes is one neglectful neighbor to bring the whole community down. So the county receives many complaints from adjacent property owners in these areas, but because it's zoned ag, they can't do anything about it. So other jurisdictions have been successful in adding specific carve-outs to this section, enabling those jurisdictions to enact tall grass and clutter ordinances in agricultural areas if the lot is 1 acre or less in the area and used for a residential purpose. And so that's what we're seeking, Madam Chair, is to have Accomack County added and give Accomack County that flexibility. There is an amendment, Madam Chair, and that the planning district number is off, Madam Chair, so the amendment would change it from 6 to 22.
Okay. May I have a motion to accept the amendment?
I don't know, who's Plan 6, might want to amend?
I think it's Highland County, I think, if they want.
I'm sure it's actually Southwest Virginia.
Yeah, somewhere out
And
there.
that was going to be my question. I thought he was in the wrong planning district.
Okay, so Senator McPike's moved and Senator Steff seconds the amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, we've changed the number. Any speakers in favor of, although I think I asked if we were all in favor, right? Okay. All those who wish to speak in favor of this bill as amended, come forward. Anybody wishing to speak in opposition? Anybody on Zoom wishing to speak either in favor or in opposition?
We have no speakers, Madam Chair.
Senator Lewis, do you have any concluding remarks?
Simple little bill, Madam Chair.
So your concluding remark is please pass the bill.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, is there a motion to report the bill as amended? Motion has been made and seconded. Will the clerk open the roll, please?
Ayes 13, noes 2.
Senator Lewis, your bill reports. I will turn the mic back to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that completes our docket for today. I will give everybody on the committee a heads up. I believe we may have another very non-controversial charter bill coming towards us. So it might require a meeting at the desk or something of that nature, but be on the lookout. Thank you all very much. We are adjourned. Okay. What'd you do with that?